Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, whoa, I'm a little fuzzy. Let's try. Let's see if we can fix that there for a second there, kits and cubs. There we go. That should be better. There we go. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs, and welcome to season 5 of, well, in this case, the True North Eager Beaver interview project, also known as episode number 794 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. Always 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Monday, November 24th, 2025. It's a bit of a gray day here at the Beaver Lodge, but inside, tons of sunshine, as you can tell by my voice. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A. And not with me, as usual, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. But we do have a guest today for you, so I'm not alone. A big thank you goes to our podcast's founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and PsychicTarot.ca. Kids and cubs, how is your mental health today? Mine is doing very well, I have to say. We had a full week of shows that went absolutely extraordinarily well. Standing ovation for every show. I'm feeling it in the body a little bit, though, I have to say. 9 straight days of rehearsals and performances. Uh, a little tired. We almost lost a few people along the way. We had a couple of people that had some fatigue on the Saturday marathon day, and on the last day, our female lead's voice was, she thought it was going to be a little shaky, but she performed very well and everything came out. She delivered in the clutch, let's put it that way. So we had a great series of shows, but I am very happy for a day or two off before we go back. But yeah, we're having a fantastic run, a great group, great audiences, great vibe all along. So I cannot be anything but happy. And in addition, my sweetie is back home. My beaver sweetie's back home from his big scientific conference out in the United States. Got home last night around 10 p.m. So it was a very, very, very happy homecoming. So I am a very happy beaver today. And I am doubly happy because we have an absolutely extraordinary guest today. This is a person for whom I have a ton of respect, not only for his career in broadcasting, but his overall career. I mention him on the show often enough because I do consume his content. It is of great quality, and I do highly recommend it. But kits and cubs, our guest today, just to give you a little taste, um, is a broadcaster that has 5 decades of experience. He hosted a daily national broadcast, interactive political talk show for 5 years on CHTV, and he hosted a leading news talk radio show on CHML from 1988 to 1997. And then he returned to CMHL in 2006 to host The Bill Kelly Show on which is an interactive news talk show where he discusses national and global affairs, tech industry insights, and popular topics of the day. And after 17 years, he made the transition to podcasting and has hosted the Bill Kelly podcast since summer 2023 with new episodes published every Tuesday and Thursday. They are excellent. Again, I cannot recommend them highly enough. But in addition to that, our guest has also served on a municipal council. So when we say, democracy is something that you do, he has done that and has as well. And this is the part that I'm sure Mr. Grizzly would be very happy to be here for if he could be here today. Also worked as a stadium announcer for the Hamilton Tiger Cats for 13 seasons. As you can tell, we have somebody very interesting. So, Kits and Cubs, without any further ado, and I apologize for being a little tardy, but we had some pre-show conversation that was extremely engaging, and I'm going to guess that this conversation is going to be equally as engaging. So I'm very excited. But Kits and Cubs, put your paws up and give a big round of applause for much respected broadcaster, Mr. Bill Kelly. Welcome to the Beaver Lodge, sir. How are you?
It's a great honor to be here. I'm a big fan of your podcast too, and it's I was really honored when you said, "Hey, can we get together and do something like this?" So here we are, bright and early, and ready to rock and roll. And I share the problem here with us. We're getting a little bit late because we get off on a tangent. I mean, as we're sure going to talk about it, we love live theater, and of course you're a participant. So I had to pick your brain, about the show, what's like, and the auditions and everything else. So I'm sure we're going to get into that through the conversation too. But it's something I'm really looking forward to. So thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, my pleasure. And when I heard, you know how it is, because I mean, I would not call myself a broadcaster yet because I don't think I've earned it yet because it is a career. But, when we're in similar domains and you respect each other's work and when you have someone of your stature turn around and say, like, you've actually heard of my work, it's like when Madeline, who arranged this for us, told me that, I was like, what? He's actually heard of us? It's like, oh my God,
That's one of the things you learn, though, in the radio and TV and where I was. You never know who's out there. You never know who's
right.
watching or listening or whatever the case might be. Some days you think nobody, like, what am I doing this for? And then you hear from listeners or people that just said, I heard you say this and it changed my life, or it made my day, or something like this. And you don't get instant gratification necessarily with this, but you do get gratification nonetheless. And it's what gets you out of bed every morning and getting off to do your thing for so many years. But it's invigorating to do this sort of thing, and you're an invigorated. You're invigorated. You're the junkie. This is performing, and then you okay. I'm going to put this down now, and I'm going to go on stage and perform all over again and do something altogether different. You're a broadcaster. You're a performer, and it's incredible that you found those avenues for you to basically to be able to use your skills in such a varied manner. Not too many people have that ability. You do. And thank God you found some places for you to channel that too.
Yeah. It's you. I think it's a life thing. You arrive at a point in your life at one point that it's just becomes simplify, and I don't know how to be anybody else but me because I've been being me all my life, and it's sort of like all of this, like the good, the bad, the ugly, the quirky, the weird, you put it all together, it's just one big, beautiful mess. And if you can channel it somewhere a little positive, then, good things happen. So I just basically knock on doors, show up and say, can I be invited to the party? And then some people say yes, and then I have a good time.
But what's it like? You are you, and you're unique. We're all unique in our own way. But you have this extra advantage where every now and then you can step outside of you and be somebody else for
Yeah.
2.5 hours every night. You get a couple of nights off now, thankfully. I know you were just mentioning, but that's got to be fabulous, and probably something where you're not reinventing yourself, but you're going down a different road, and it's kind of like, okay, you set yourself aside for a second, and now I'm going to be whatever character it is that you're going to be doing on stage for however many times like that. And it's obviously there's a rush involved in that too, but psychologically, it's got to be nice to kind of say, okay, I'm going to take a pause from being me, and I'm going to go be somebody else for a little while. And I've talked to a lot of people that are in that performing area, and they say it's almost surreal to simply say, okay, I'm going to be a whole different character, totally different from who I am, and it's invigorating for them. And I guess that way, when you come back to being you, you're reinvigorated him because you said, okay, I've just had a timeout. Now I'm ready to be me again.
Yep. And it's also good in the sense that because you can be so many different people, my natural personality is like I'm hardwired for optimism and happy, and and I like everyone to be happy around me and comfortable. So every now and then when I get to play someone who's not so nice, it's like, oh, maybe this is why I'm so calm and nice in regular life, because I get to be bad elsewhere.
I've heard this from so many performers. They like to be the bad guy because they're not a bad guy in real life. And it's a role that they can just kind of assume and kind of, let it envelop them. Sean Majumba, the great comedian who's from Newfoundland, some of the great talents, of course, in Canadian theater are from Newfoundland. I don't know why that happens, but they do. But he mentioned, he was on This Hour is 22 Minutes for the longest time, but a lot of the dramatic roles he gets, he's always the bad guy.
Right.
And it's a great, they just love being the bad guy, getting that role because it's so contrary to what they really are. You can actually just be somebody else totally different. I mean, because the other is also true. I mean, so many performers that we all know and see on a pretty constant basis, they're the same person. I mean, they may play this role. I'm a fighter pilot. I'm this, I'm that, but it's the same guy.
Right.
And that's okay. I mean, there's a talent to that too. But to be able to simply transform yourself into a totally different character and a totally different persona, it's got to be a real rush for you.
It is. I got a role once where I was asked to do, like, I'm reading it, and it's a director I'd worked with before, and I'm go back to them and it says, "Are you sure I'm the right person for this? Because there's absolutely nothing of me at all in this." Because I always look for something of me in the character, and first, and my sort of style is to sort of like, okay, if I was me, how would I be reacting to this? To try to get a more sort of natural reaction that's not forced, and then I try to look at the character, and then how do I shape that to make it to the character, but I try to keep the reactions as natural and normal to me. But this one, there was absolutely nothing I could anchor. I was just a horrible person. And I was only like a hair sliver more redeemable than the other person in the play. And I'm sitting there, and it's like I don't think I know how to do this. And he goes, I have confidence in you, Alex. And I ended up getting it and doing the role really well. But I would like come home after rehearsal, and like my whole body was sore and I couldn't understand it. And it was like about 3 weeks later I realized, well, I'm angry the entire time in the play, and I'm always just like a tight spring ready to just pop. So it's like when I'm doing the role, everything in my body is tense because like I'm always angry and walking off and storming off. And it's like, wow, contracting your muscles like for 50 minutes that hurts. So it kind of carries with you afterwards. It's like you're done being bad for the night, and then everybody goes, "Oh my God, you were so good at being bad." And oh, thank you. And then you go home and it's like, "Oh man, I feel that being bad. Yeah, okay. Now I know I'm not bad in regular life." That gets stored in the body.
How long does it take you to come down from that?
Oh my!
You're that character for 3 hours, and okay, show's over, curtain comes down. Hey, you are great, fabulous. But can you just flip a switch and be yourself again, or is there a process? Is there a de-escalation that has to happen?
Character-wise, I'm pretty good at just popping in and out, which I'm told is not necessarily usual. I'm pretty good at popping in and out, but there's an adrenaline kick that you get from performing.
Sure.
I mean, first of all, you're on a high wire, right? Anything can mess up at any time. Then that's what I love about it, because one, I live for the awkward moment. So if something messes up, you have to figure it out. But you get that feedback along the way. Like sometimes you get audiences that are really quiet and you're thinking like, do they hate this? And then you realize like about halfway through the show, no, they're just, it's wrapped with attention. Like you've got them. And then you get other audiences that are more expressive, but you're always getting something back as you're doing it, and you can factor it in real time and say, okay, I need to up this, or I need to bring a little more energy because that didn't land or something. Right. But once the show is over and like this, and you get the applause, and that's the wonderful thing about theater is that nobody comes to see you fail. Everybody's rooting for you in the business.
Sure.
So I don't get nervous that way. But there's a buzz that you get. It's I guess it's like a high that you get
Sure.
when you're on stage and you perform and people like it and you get the feedback, and that's the thing that takes me about like an hour or two, sometimes 2.5 after the show to come down from. I'm like riding this big wave and I get home and it's like, you want to go to bed. And it's like, I can't, I just had a great performance. People just loved it. And it's like, and so you're sitting at home, and you're like having a tea, you're not watching TV or anything. You're not trying to stimulate your brain anymore. And you're just like coasting on the good vibes. And then eventually it starts to come down. So, okay, I can go to bed now. And on a tame night at the theater that could last me about an hour and a half. And with this show, when we're getting these big roars and standing ovations, we get off stage at 10:30, and I don't think I've managed to get to bed before 2:30.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I remember seeing some interviews with some of the, like on live theater and Broadway or whatever. And one guy in particular says, he says, I didn't realize there was a 10 a.m. Who knew? Because I don't go to bed till about 4 and, sleep right through it till about noontime. It's a different life altogether when you're doing theater, isn't it? Your body clock is different, everything else. And you have the direct advantage, I think, of instant, well, in some cases, gratification, whatever the case might be. The audience is there to respond. You don't get that doing radio or doing television for the most part anyway. But to actually know that, I mean, the play, doing Guys and Dolls, for instance, when they're going to laugh, because the lines, the punchlines, how they're going to be delivered. This is one of the big songs. I know that's, I've been saying 16 times now. This is going to be this is going to be the crescendo right here.
Right.
And it's got to be a real rush, an adrenaline rush for you when that actually happens. And I guess you crash on the other hand if you figure, wait, where was the reaction? If it doesn't happen, you know right away too, don't you?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's what's happening backstage. People come back and says like, they didn't laugh at that one. Why? They laughed at that one another 5 days. What do we do? So yeah, there's this ongoing conversation, and it's really funny because you get all these different actors backstage, and everybody has their own personality, and some are more nervous, some are more secure, some are more like, yeah, I got this. I deliver in the clutch all the time. Right. That type of thing. But it's just like, well, yeah, when something like particularly lands, it's the other way around too. My God, they really laughed at that. Or sometimes they laugh at something that you never intended to be funny. It just comes out in a certain way, and they laughed at that. So yeah, but yeah, you do get that instant gratification. And when we did in this one, when we do sit down, we're rocking the boat. The first night, because we're bringing people along. There's another number or two after that, but the sit down, the rocking the boat's the last big production number with the whole cast on.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and we finished that last note, and then it's just like wow, like just a big roar from the audience. That is something I had never ever experienced. Like during the show itself, after a number, everybody just go wow, and it's like it actually pulled me out of character for a couple of seconds. Fortunately, there's 34 of us on stage, so maybe nobody was looking at me at that exact time. It was like, damn. I'm looking at my castmates and go, did that really happen? So it's a lot of fun.
Live theater, you're going to have that though. I mean, there are, they call them showstoppers, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're watching Les Mis, when Jean, when he sings, Bring Him Home, damn well that there's going to be a huge, probably standing ovation, and you have to kind of build that into your performance, don't you?
Yeah.
Just you drink it in, but at the same time, you've got to stay in character.
Yeah, exactly, and you respect the audience by giving them the moment, rather than just like moving right on to the next scene.
Yeah.
Like this, so the transition's a little slower or that type of stuff. But I have to say it's it's a really nice buzz. It makes you feel really, really good.
Which is why
Well,
he's in such a good mood today. See,
yes.
you're still on that high, aren't you? And you haven't performed. What, Saturday was the last show this week?
Yesterday a
Oh,
matinee.
you didn't. Oh, okay. The Sunday
Yeah,
matinee.
we did 4 shows in something like 35 hours or something.
Wow.
Yeah, we had a Friday night, Saturday matinee, Saturday night, and Sunday matinee. So that's why we had a couple of people on the Saturday night sort of tap out for fatigue, and the lights, and it's hot backstage, and
Hmm.
well, it's guys and dolls. So the guys, we're all wearing like these 3-piece suits, so we have all
Yeah.
these layers and whatnot. So every now and then we're like backstage, it's like take the coat off and air out, drink water. But yeah, we're very lucky that we have a very supportive cast, and the connections between us are really good. So we're having a lot of fun on stage. We're at the point now where we're not looking at our feet anymore when we're dancing. It's like the eyes up performing, and we know our material well enough that now we're getting to play with each other or on stage as well. So this is the fun part. This is the part we do it for.
Now, you've been doing this for a while. I mean, you're guys and dolls now, but obviously, as you and I talked about before we started rolling here,
Right.
you've had other performances, other shows. And the question I always hear from people who maybe attend these things is, how do they do this night after night after night, whether it's a short run or not? Does it ever get stale? Do you ever just I got to go through the motions again? And when I talk to people like yourself who are the performers, invariably what I hear is, no, every night's fresh.
Yep.
Because it's a different audience. They're going to react differently, as you say. Sometimes they're going to laugh at that. Some people aren't, but they're
Yep.
going to they're going to react one way or another. Just different parts of the show.
Right.
The audience develops a character too, don't they?
Yes.
And it's different every night, so it's never stale, I would think, for the performer.
No, it never is. And plus your performance, you're coming in with different energy every
Mhm.
night too, right? There's everything that happened in your day, by the time you get to the stage. So sometimes lines come out, sometimes they'll come out with a little more humor, and the next night they come out with a little more edge, right? And the point is about acting is to know your material well enough that you can forget it, I guess, and actually be in the moment, even though you've had this moment 50 times before with rehearsals and past performances or whatnot. This is the first time you are having this moment, this particular one on this particular night, because everything's different. So even though you've heard the same line, whatnot like this, you can't use, if the line comes out with a little more edge, you can't use the same reaction you had the night before.
Mm-hmm.
You have to alter it to figure out to incorporate the edge, and then you might have to give some edge back, or or have a little bit of, whoa, pump the brakes, like in your answer or something. So that part of it also keeps it fresh. It's never the same thing. So if you are able to get on, like I did To Kill a Mockingbird once, and we're in the courtroom scene, and we're all back, and we're watching the courtroom scene. The verdict's going to come down on. We all know what the verdict's going to be. We rehearsed the show, we read the play, but it's like you always have to react to the verdict like it's the first time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, okay, it's like you're sitting there and you're in the sort of like the spectator box, and you're watching the trial, and it's like, okay, I've never seen this before. So the verdict is yes, yeah, guilty. No. It's like, so you're always trying to create that moment that's fresh. So it's you have to. It's amazing how much you need to forget once you get on stage to actually be able to do. Whereas the instinct would be, oh my God, I need to remember this. The arm placement is here. It's this particular beat. And it's like, no, you literally have to just forget it and then just experience the moment all over again every night.
How difficult is that to do? To put it in the rearview mirror and say, what I did Saturday was Saturday. This is Sunday. This is matinee. This is a different approach, different attitude. To simply, basically wash that out of your memory and simply say, this is all new. I'm going this way. And what's happening right here at this moment is what matters, not what I did last night.
Yeah. For me, it's pretty simple. But then it's like after the moment passes, when you get backstage or you're thinking about it next day, then I remember everything, how it compared to the night before or whatnot. But in the moment, I like to play. So I'm pretty good
Mhm.
at, okay, like this is playtime, and I just forget everything. Like my mind just becomes this blank slate that I just go in. But yeah, not everybody has a different process, but mine is just I I confess I'm a ham, so I just like to be out there. So I just like wipe the slate clean and I just go, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit of an odd duck that way. Before we had come on, and you had asked me about something, and I think the audience would be interested in this, but you had asked me about the audition process,
Yeah.
and I said
And again, for somebody, I've always loved watching theater, actors, actresses, musicals, and drama, whatever the case might be. I mentioned we go to Stratford as often as we can, off Broadway shows in Toronto, whatever the case might be. But I'm always thinking about, how do you get the part? I mean, somebody, we were just talking about some of the big names that we saw when we were on Broadway, and
right.
there's James Earl Jones. I don't think he probably had to audition for the part in the show that I saw.
Mm,
Angela Lansbury, the grand dame of Broadway for so many years. But for the rest of them, and I channel through a chorus line, the fabulous Marvin Hamlish play that was such a big hit and still is. I guess it's always fresh.
yes.
But that whole process and the mind games that go on for the audition itself, and you go through that as an actor time and
Right.
time again. What's that like to go through that process, to actually go on stage, and whether it's a song you're going to sing for the audition or it's a passage. I always remember the movie Shakespeare in Love.
Right.
Everybody there's Will Shakespeare up on stage, trying to get auditions, and everybody's going it's the same passage. Everybody, and you figure, how many times do I have to hear this?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's you, and maybe you're doing the same passage that the past 6 people did, but it's got to
Yes.
be fresh. It's got to be great the way you do it. Forget about
Yes.
what they did.
Yes. And things are like, various auditions are different, but most of the ones I go for regular plays are, sometimes they'll either ask you to prepare something, a monologue of your own
Hmm.
of some kind, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes you just come in and they ask you a couple questions. They want to get a sense of you, and you'll just get a passage to read, and like it's cold. You'll either get it when you arrive there and you register and you get to read it a couple of times, or sometimes they even just hand it to you like right in the audition, and you've had like all of like a minute to read it and sort of do the best you can with it. Um, there are certain types of plays where you audition alone, and there was one play I did called Over the River Through the Woods, where it was sort of like an Italian family around a table, so there was always this crosstalk. So we had to audition 6 at a time and bring us as a group because there were not very many monologues specifically. So you get different types of auditions in that sense, and then when you get to a musical, there's always a dance passage, a song passage, and then a reading passage. So those auditions are a little longer when you're doing the musical. And there are different things that happen. Like even though I'm a dancer first, I always get nervous for the dance portion because even though I'm a good dancer, I was never someone who picked up choreography really rapidly.
Hmm.
So they just show you the dance pass like a couple of times and they say do it. And it's like, and I'm usually like 2 left feet in the audition process because it's like, well, how do we get from there to there? But there's no time to explain it, right? Because they're just passing
Yeah.
people through. So that's the part that usually makes me the most nervous. But if I can get through that one relatively well, if I can pick up the choreography of the dance pass relatively well, then I'm okay on the other ones. Singing is the one that I'm the least confident about because it's the one I have the least amount of experience. But I helped myself along the way a couple of years ago, joined a choir and sort of learned a little bit more. So I'm now equally as confident about my singing as I am about my acting. So I'm feeling good about that. But yeah, the audition processes are weird, and they change a lot. Like there are certain things that you can expect every time, but then you just sometimes you have a director that has a vision or they want a specific thing
Hmm.
and they're looking for a specific thing. So the audition process can seem, a little different. Like, why are we doing this and why are we doing this way? But you just gotta sort of roll with it. But a lot of people can psych themselves out at auditions. I tend not to. I actually like the audition process,
Mm.
and you have to be good with rejection, right? So if you're an actor and you're bad with rejection, you're in the wrong career. So because you're
That's
going to get told no a whole lot more than you're going to be told yes,
sure,
right?
sure. We all, as humans, we all want to be loved. We all want to be admired, and our talents, whatever it is, and whether it's acting or whatever the case might be. And that positive reaffirmation is fabulous. But you're right. The other side of that coin can be devastating sometimes. I even learned that in radio.
Yeah.
I did all sorts of forms. I mean, obviously talk radio for the last little while, but I mean, we all start off, you're spinning records, whether it's top 40 or easy listening or country, whatever the case might be. And the little witticisms and this and that and the other thing. And you think everybody must love me. This is funny. Oh, that was fun. And you get, hey, Bill, great show, fabulous. And every now and then you go into somebody that I think you suck. And when it first happens, and especially now when I'm, doing talk radio, especially politically oriented, it's a show about opinions. And one of those opinions is mine.
Right.
And some people are not going to like it. Some people are just going to, really lay into you. And if you're not ready for it, it can really knock you down. And it's something you don't become oblivious to it, but you have to accept that that's part of the job.
Yeah.
And that's difficult as an actor, as a performer. Anybody who gets in front of somebody else to perform or to say, or whether it's a soliloquy or to do something like this, you have to be prepared for rejection. And you just hope that there's more people over here that liked it that didn't. But there's always going to be that other element there too. Including directors. They're going to say, thanks for coming out. Thanks for wasting my time. And I mean, they can be pretty, sarcastic and acerbic sometimes.
Yes.
And you got to let that roll off your back and just say, okay, I got to move on from that. And that's difficult for anybody to do, really.
Yep. And I have this feeling, I'm not particularly religious, but I have this, I heard this saying, and I find that it fits. Sometimes rejection is the Lord's protection.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, there's a show you don't get, and then your friend of yours get it, and then got it, and you're talking to them a little later, and it's like, oh my God, it's such a mess, and it's like, thank you.
Well,
I didn't get
the other side of that
coin
is I didn't get it. Oh shit, my life is over. And then you move, and then something else happens, and you figure, you know what? If I had got that show, this opportunity wouldn't be there for me.
Exactly.
And so, but mind you, when the initial rejection, like, thanks for coming out, that's not what you're thinking. You're just thinking, oh God, I'm crushed. This is the end of my career.
Yeah.
But then in hindsight, a few days later, it could be sometimes all of a sudden this happens. But it's amazing how, we don't prepare for that. And we always think that there's going to be other opportunities. And what you have to kind of, I'm sure you've done it because just the way you're performing and while watching your show, you've got to know, okay, I'm going to have good days and bad days, good performances and bad performances, but I am good at what I do. I have a talent here. And some days it's going to rock and roll. I mean, Connor McDavid doesn't score every time he gets the puck. I mean, he's going to have bad games and great games. And it's the same thing when you're performing in any realm, whether it's on stage or on broadcasting, whatever the case might be. And that's what the most difficult part is, accepting the fact that rejection and animosity, in some cases, it can go to extremes, are part of the job too. And that's use the hockey example, I guess the metaphor again. You can get booed in some arenas. You're going to get cheered in other arenas. And you, as a live performer, you're going to get it right there. You don't have to wait until this show's over and then go back and say, okay, what are the comments? That's always interesting reading too. But the audience will let you know right away what's going on, and that's at the same time you want to drink that in, but at the same time you have to somewhat be oblivious to it because you're still carrying on, right?
Yeah, you still got a job to do, right? This is the rest of the show, and when you're mentioning that, like the comments, like, even I've never actually said this on the show, but we have live chat going on the show at the same time, and there have been times we're in the middle of a show, like I turn around and like I'm looking at the live chat comments and I see something, or post show, and it's like, and it's from a regular listener, but it's something they didn't like.
Yeah.
Right? And sit there, and I remember when I first started doing this, it would jar me a little when I would see it, because it's like, wow, well, this person usually likes most of the things I do, and it's like they didn't like that, and it's like, why did they not like that? And it's like, and I'm questioning and all this kind of stuff, and I had to stop and think, not everybody's going to like everything you do all the time, right? And criticism or critique, right, is valuable, but it was like to get step aside from the initial defensive reaction.
Yeah.
Say like, okay, is there something in there? Like, this is a person that watches the show, a lot, that normally likes the show. This didn't resonate with them. It's like, did I do something, or is it just, just me being me? And, you just can't hit 100% of the time. And you just have to accept that and move on. Conversely, with the theater, when you've been doing it for long enough, and I guess similar with broadcasting, I guess, is that you have the confidence that comes with the fact that, okay, I got to know this time, or they didn't like what I did this time. But over the course of my entire career, I've been invited to the party often enough that I know that I have some talent at what I'm doing. So the no's become a little less devastating over time, unless it's something you really wanted. But they get less devastating over time because you have that background. It's like, I know I'm not awful. I've been cast enough times to know I'm not awful. But this one wasn't a good fit. And it's the same thing with the comments. It's right. You sit there and it's like, okay, well, no, you have to consider the source. This is someone that watches the show that genuinely and usually likes what you do, and today they didn't. So in that sense, if you're going to take critique from people from whom you would take advice.
Yeah.
Right.
And if you have, and you do have loyal viewers on a consistent basis,
Yeah.
and when you hear something like that from them, I feel that, if they're consistently listening or watching, over a period of time, there's a sense of ownership. They say, I'm part of that show.
Yes.
I'm absorbing it. I'm viewing it. But at the same time, you develop a relationship with your viewers, and that's a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
And like you say, and if they have an opinion that's contrary to what you just said on a particular show, they're entitled to it. And I feel as if, as a matter of fact, because you watch all the time, you know what I'm all about. And if you feel that, I just didn't think you did this properly, or I didn't agree with this, okay, that's fair criticism, fair comment. I may not agree with it, but I figured there's an entitlement there to say, yeah, you have the right to comment on this because you know the product, and you, for the most part, seem to enjoy it. But every now and then you have the right to say, no, I didn't like that. I don't like that. We all do that in everyday life too.
Yeah.
And as the performer, as the host on this show, for instance, you accept that and simply say, well, okay, fine. And you may change it. You may say, you know what, and be open to minded about it. Say, you know what, they're probably right. Maybe I shouldn't have said it that way. Maybe I shouldn't have made that comment offhandedly about something.
Right.
And you learn too. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's again part of the process to simply, you have to accept the critiques and criticism, both the good and the bad, and learn from it. Some of them you can just dismiss and say, well, no, you didn't understand what I was talking about. But then I say, well, maybe I didn't explain it properly on the show then. So that's something I got to file again to say next time, if that arises again, I'll do it probably in a different fashion.
Yeah. And I don't know if it's the same for you, but when you said that people are invested and they feel that they have ownership, but I personally want that.
Sure.
Right.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
guess I tell my audience, it's like, write back, let me know what you like, because this is your show too, right? Because through this particular platform, the podcasting and whatnot, specifically if you're doing live, but even if you're not doing live, because if you're on YouTube, you get to go back and look at the chat replay after and see what people are talking about, right? You can get that feedback relatively quickly. You want them, at least for me, I want them to have some ownership in the show. I want them to, I'm trying instinctively from the get-go to build some type of community with this, right? I don't want to just be somebody who talks at people, right? I want to talk with them. I want to engage with them. And, there's that whole aspect there that I want them to have ownership. And then I always have to remember that I have blind spots, right?
Sure.
There are ways that I want to come across that sometimes I don't, despite my best intentions. And again, they're the ones that say, you missed something there. And it's like, oh, yeah, there's a little humility that comes with that, to accept the fact that maybe I just didn't deliver it right. Maybe I was wrong, or maybe I have a blind spot, or or I was really, really just overconfident that this would connect, and it didn't. Right. And it's like, you've got to, like I said, you got to take those cues and you got to learn from them and integrate them and move on. And I think if an audience sees you doing that, one of the things that we do on the show is that we ask people, if we got something wrong, to let us know. And when they do, we actually say, like, I have to issue a gentle correction on myself. Like, I got this wrong. So if people see that, then they tend to, over time, they tend to be gentler with the critique as well, because they know that you're trying. It gets delivered differently as well. And like I said, you get this sort of supportive, even when there's things that they're hard to say, you get this supportive dynamic that comes along. That's very helpful. And I don't know if that's been your experience as well.
Oh, sure. And see, I guess doing what we do here, actually have a bit of an advantage over a lot of other people. Not everyone else has a chance to go back at the end of the day and watch the replay of what they did at work that day.
Right.
And be able to parse this out and know, well, wait a minute, what did I do that for? We do. I mean, you can go back and watch the show, read the comments as I can. And as athletes do, they watch, there's the video of, hey, you know what, you swing at you can't hit the fastball anymore. Or, even the great actors, and they're all great actors. But, even the Kenneth Branaghs or the Al Pacinos, they need a director.
Yes.
As great as they are, and they know they need a director. There always has to be another set of eyes that will look at this, and eyes that you respect, and because you want that opinion from, and you have to be able to accept that feedback. And in our case, in your show, and now the podcast that I'm doing, our listeners, our viewers, are the eyes and ears, and you want that feedback to say, you know what, I like the show, I like what you do, but I didn't think I did that right, or I didn't agree with what you said about that. Or if you decided to come on one day all of a sudden and say, okay, we're going to change the format of this, you're going to get pushback, because people there's a comfort level. They watch your show, they watch our show, because they like the format. Not necessarily all the opinions that they may agree with or not, but they like the whole concept. And as soon as you change that and make them uneasy, I expect it. I want to hear back from them to say, you didn't like that? Okay, and you're right. That's where the dialogue comes back in, to say, I see where you're coming from, but we're doing this for that reason. Or we could say, you know what, maybe I missed the mark there. Maybe we have to go back and do that again. Not everybody has that chance. And if I think it's incumbent upon yourself and me in our situations to do that. And every now and then to put the mirror up in front and say, how's it going? What are we doing? And you, I guess, compare that to, like you say, the chat sections, the comment sections, and say, yeah, you know what, maybe there's an element of truth to what they're doing there right now. You have to be malleable. You have to and first of all, with yourself. You can't just say, here I am and here's who I am. This is not going to change. It has to change. And we all do that through life anyway, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Life alters you, and you have to be able to adapt to those changes, and you have to do it in a microcosm. You have to do it every day when you're doing podcasts too.
Yeah. And the way that you react to things, or strategies that you use to get through situations, work for you until they don't.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And then you have to find a new way, which is always a little jarring. It's like, wait a minute, this has always worked for me. Why is it not working anymore?
Yeah.
Like, well, people have moved on. Times have changed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're a little older, and that response mechanism is not as cute anymore as it was when you were younger. Right.
Or you're not as cute anymore. I mean, life.
Yes.
Of course, not your case, but but there's always that element to it as well.
Indeed.
Do you ever find yourself, okay, what am I going to do today? What am I going to talk about? I mean, you run dry? I mean, it's a labor of love. I mean, I love doing this. I think I mentioned just before we started the show today, for years and years, I hated getting up. I mean, we're living in Hamilton for a period of time. For about an 8 or 10 year period, I had to work in radio in Toronto. I didn't have to, but I mean, that's where the jobs were. Getting up at 3:30 in the morning to go and do a morning show in Toronto, to be there for 6, and it's a pain in the ass to get up there, and I'm cursing myself. Why am I doing this? And I'm cursing myself during the drive in, but then you get down there and you're in front of the microphone, and all of a sudden, okay, this is what it's all about, and you kind of you just get lost in the job, and you get the euphoria of the job. But by the same token, the element of routine can really get in for a while, and you figure sometimes you just run dry. I mean, Shakespeare had he didn't just sit down and write 12th Night. I mean, sometimes you get writer's block. Songwriters have the same sort of thing. Performers have the same sort of thing. If you're a stage performer, well, you can fall back on the script, but by the same token, sometimes it's hard to bring you into the person, whether you're doing this or whether you're doing a performance on stage, and it's a little frightening.
Yeah.
When I started in radio, as I say, most talk shows, maybe there was one talk show on every radio station, if they even had one. So you were playing records, spinning the hits, as it was. And the nightmare that everybody always had in my business was, oh my God, the turntables don't work. What am I going to do? I'm on for another 3 hours and I can't play any music. Well, I can't talk for 3 hours. What I do now for a living, but that was the nightmare. All of a sudden, one of those tools that you rely on, some would say it's a crutch, is not there for you. And
Right.
and that's the whole thing. And as a performer, even with what you're doing now with the podcast, some days you're going to just think, you know what, it's not working. I'm trying.
Yes.
But it's not. How do you rationalize? How do you get through that?
Oh God, some days not elegantly. As anybody watches, because we do this live, right?
Yeah.
You also have the element like sometimes tech just will not cooperate.
Yeah.
Like no matter how much you pet your computer and cajole it, it's like, come on, you can do it. It's the computer just says no.
Well, this morning you started off and you were fuzzy.
Yes.
Which I thought was a metaphor for Monday morning, but I mean, but you have to roll with that. And what's I find fascinating about this too is sometimes you may finish. When I was doing the radio show, noon would come along, I'm done. I figured, boy, that sucked. I was missing it. And then you hear back and say, what a great show.
Right?
Yeah. So sometimes you're your own worst critic. In situations like that, but that's I think a testimony to the fact that you just keep going, keep rolling.
Oh yeah.
As Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going forward. You got to get through it. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
And you do that in this business too.
Yep. Well, we on this show, right? We keep on telling people, it's like, we don't mind showing you how the sausage is made. So
yeah.
Right. So the sausage didn't stay in the casing today. Sorry. But yeah, it throws you in the moment too, because I mean, there is a certain level of professionalism that I do try to bring, and there's a certain amount of flow.
Mhm.
I want the episode to appear seamless. I don't want people to see the production aspects. When I'm able to say, okay, we're going to go to a clip here, and I go to the clip, and the clip loads, and it goes smoothly, and I get out of the clip, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, that felt good. And then there are other days it's like, I'm going to start. Nope, okay, that didn't work. Oh, the volume's not right. Okay, let's try that again. Right? And it just doesn't happen for you. But you just got to trust that the audience is on the ride, along the ride with you. Right. And yes, it's not as smooth as you like, but that they won't mind, because they know that, that if you've curated stuff for them, that you've had care and conscientiousness and discernment in picking the material that you are curating, so that it's, if you have to wait an extra 3 seconds, it's going to be worth the wait. Number one, right? There's a trust there that with the audience, you have to trust that your audience will be okay with you making a couple of mistakes, and tech happens. But there are days that, like you say, I wake up and it's like I'm going through the news, or the night before I'm going through the news, and I like to have like some kind of theme or something for what I'm going to do, and there's just nothing speaks to me, or there's no inspiration. And it's sort of like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And some days I'm able to force a round peg into a square hole and kind of make it fit and say, okay, I kind of sort of got a theme. And like on Friday, for example, it was just like, okay, we're just going to do a grab bag of news today, because I don't have anything specifically. There's no theme. There's no running narrative throughout it. It's just a various collection of things that I find interesting and I think you should know, and I'm going to share them. And there's going to be no running through line through it. It's just, oh, and this is interesting. Oh, and this is interesting too. And sometimes some days are just like that. That's what you got, and you make the best of what you got, because at the end of the day, the content is one thing, and you want to have quite high quality content, but the relationship, I call my audience the damn fam. They're an essential part of my day now. Like I joke with them, they're like my glass of orange juice at breakfast, right? It's just they're my vitamin C. I need them to start the day. They there are days I come to the show where I had a bad day. or a bad night the night before. Recently, I got very ill. All of a sudden, my health just went down in the space of like 48 hours, and I was in the ER, and I was scared. And I had actually missed a show in the morning, which I very rarely do. I think I've been doing this 5 years, and I think I've only missed 2 shows. We weren't always daily, but there's some like 2 or 3 days I wasn't able to do a show, and I didn't have time to warn anybody all that much either. It's just there was just no show, and it's like, once it happened because I locked myself out of the house, which is not particularly glamorous. But like this time, I was sick, uh, and but I was really scared, and I came back and I shared with why I was away, and I got overly emotional almost, because it was the first time I was sort of releasing some of the stuff, and I was crying as I was talking about this, and I got so much love from the audience when they found out that I had been away and that I wasn't feeling well. And it's like, take time, take care, because I always tell people, we talk about mental health and all that kind of stuff, and ask to take people to take time for self-care when it's needed. And this time was I needed to take my own advice, and like the entire damn fam was there. It's like, take your own damn advice. It's like, don't rush back. We will be here. Take a couple of days for you if you need them. And how can you not feel good when you get that
Yeah.
back, right? It's just, no matter how distraught I was, no matter, and then you get this mix of emotions where you're sharing this, and there's this emotional thing per moment that's coming out, but you're getting all this love at the same time. So you're like blubbering, but that you're feeling grateful. It's like, and it's just this jumble of mess of emotions. And again, you trust the audience that they're there on this ride with you. Like I said, I just get so much love, and I get so much boosting. There are people from the show that have bought tickets to come and see Guys and Dolls, and that have made the trip to come and see it. Right? It's just, this is not something I expected when I started the show, that people would be not only interested in the content, but would be interested in me and my life and my well-being as a person, not just as a show host. Right? And it just makes you want to show up every morning and do more and give more. It creates this positive loop where you do want to show up and bring all of yourself day after day.
But that's going back to what we were talking a little earlier. There's a bond between you and every audience member, and I like to think that I have that over the years in radio, and certainly I've seen it in the podcast with the reaction that we get too. What I think it's a human trait. We appreciate humanity. I'm for years I was not just a voice on the radio. I was an individual. People knew me. They want to know. They have lives. They get sick. They have things going on in their lives that impact their work performance, their relationships with other family members, and so do you. And that's why they can relate to it. Say, oh, that's going on in his life too. Yeah, I can relate to that. And I think they appreciate. And I, as a viewer, for instance, appreciate when that performer that I watch or listen to, whatever the case might be, shows that human side, and is feeling that comfortable with the relationship, that they feel that I can open up, and I can be myself, and pour myself out, and they will accept that, because they understand that, first of all, there is that bond, that relationship, but secondly, he's a human being too. And he's gone through the same shit that I go through from time to time. And I didn't really have anybody to talk to. And isn't it great that we can have this dialogue back and forth? Right. I've received the same sort of feedback and response, oftentimes personal things that have happened that I've talked about in my life. Well, one of them, of course, was when the broadcasting industry, which is caving in Canada these days. That's a whole other topic. But when I left CHML, it was basically, layoffs, whatever you want to call them. About a year later, they shut the radio station down altogether.
Wow.
And after 50 years of broadcasting, it's very difficult. And I shared those emotions. I don't like what's going on. I don't like why this is happening. I'm not blaming anybody, but it sucks. And this is how it impacts you. And the feedback I got about those shows that I did and the commentaries that I did, I think it was one of my first podcasts, in fact. was so overwhelming, because they can say, yeah, that's happening. Maybe what they weren't all broadcasters that commented on it. Maybe the guy worked at GM and just lost his job, or she, got laid off because they closed the grocery store that she was a clerk at, or on and on it goes. I mean, life happens, shit happens in life. And I think that increases, and I think it strengthens the, the bond that you've got with your audience when you can be that human with them. And you do that. And it's good, that you can feel comfortable doing that, and comfortable enough with your audience that you can say, hey, what's the best thing you can do? And the best feedback you can get is when a friend sits down and said, can I talk to you? I got something on my mind. I really want to get it off. The fact that they've chosen you to be that sounding board is really heartening. Well, the listeners are doing that too, or the viewers in this case.
Yep. I agree with you. I wanted since you were talking about this, because you have lots of experience in this field, one of the things that I've noticed, at least in this era of broadcasting, and maybe you can give us a bit of historical perspective, but I'm watching these podcasts and I'm watching this whole concept of influencers. And when you build an audience, your audience places their trust in you.
Yeah.
Right? There's many places that they can go for information. There's many places that they can go, for entertainment, because, we're informing, but we're also entertaining somewhat. We want to present it the information in a format, that will go through and be well received, or more likely to be well received.
Mm-hmm.
There are things we have red lines. There are things we will not do. We've decided for ourselves. We've decided to play the long game. We could be more sensationalist, and somebody destroyed someone, or all that kind of stuff. You see that in podcasting. You see the headlines, and they got this one big word: destroyed, or pummels, or demolishes, and it's all in all caps, and and all that kind of stuff. But there's I see certain influencers that are not being honest with their audience. The news that they portray, or the angle that they portray on it, that they put on things, skews things so that it is not what it is. Some of them just outright deceive and lie, or tell mistruths about what reality is. And I can't go there, because there's a whole element of respecting your audience and respecting the trust that they place in you. And I do not understand. I would like to have a conversation with one of those sort of influencers, one to try to understand the psychology of why it is that they would not care so much about the trust that their viewers put in them, that they would knowingly or intentionally give them misinformation. But then again, I don't foresee that type of actual good faith conversation, even in quiet or in private, would be able to happen. Because I'm not sure that the honesty is there to be able to have that. But I was wondering about your thoughts about respecting your audience, and how you prepare your content for that, and how that might have changed over the years, because right now everybody is a publisher, right?
Yeah. And it has evolved and changed. And, we were talking about, for instance, to go back to talk radio, and you're a slave to ratings. And, if people aren't listening to your show or your radio station, whatever the case might be, you're probably not long for the business. And there's a temptation to give people what I've mentioned on the podcast many times. I'm not necessarily going to tell you what you want to hear, but I'm going to tell you what I think you need to hear. I'm not going to change I'm not coming on every day to change your opinion.
Right.
I'm coming on to make you think about your opinion too, and mine. And we can agree to disagree, or maybe you can say, yeah, you know what, he's got a point there, to have that. But there are others who simply say, you know what, I see the trend. I see what's going on with the influencers, the ones that have got 5 million followers, and this is how they do their show. So that's how I'm going to do mine. It's not me, but I know exactly what that's going to get me audience. It's the low hanging fruit, but you can do that. And as you say, it's attack radio or attack podcasting, whatever the case might be. And make no mistake about it, there's an audience for that. People love that sort of thing, because it's easy to hate. It's a lot easier. It's more difficult to understand. And
Yeah.
some people don't want to understand. They just want to hate because they want to vent and get, they're pissed off because, because bread costs $19 a loaf or whatever the case might be. And they want to blame somebody. And those influencers that take that tack figure, I'm going to tap into that because there's a lot of people out there that are pissed off. And if I can make them even more pissed off, they're going to come back tomorrow because they're still going to be pissed off. And I don't necessarily I'm not wearing rose-colored glasses and saying, hey, don't worry, everything's fine. No.
Right.
We need to talk about that. But anger is not going to get you anywhere. I'd rather be honest and truthful about situations. And if there's, blame to be apportioned, you can talk about that. But we can talk about it in a rational way. But at the same time, I don't want people to walk away from my podcast and figure I'm worse off than when I listen to it.
Right.
Because he's right. These guys are all jerks and they're really screwing us around. Okay, I get you. But at the same time, let's step back a little bit because the only way we're going to get through this is if we have a rational discussion. And I find, it's funny, when I was doing the shows for many years on radio, I did do national shows on CHTV, of course, and even the CHML show. It was just the one radio station, but it was, I was carried by three different radio stations at one time in the same time slot. But there were national shows, and we all know who those people are, and some of them are very, very good friends of mine. And more than a few people said, they should put you on those national shows. And I said, it's never going to happen. Why? You're great. And I said, well, I appreciate the comments, but I said, those people have a certain bent and attitude towards politics, for instance, usually to the right of center, some to the extreme right of center.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that's not me.
Right.
And I said, the powers that be that hire those people, and those are all good people, as I say, they're friends of mine, but they take a different approach to doing radio than I do.
Right.
And, the people that sign the paychecks like that because they see the immediate rush of, hey, more people are listening to that. And I said, I don't fit into that mold, so it's never going to happen. And it never did. And that's fine because I can't be somebody I'm not.
Right.
You remember, we're fans of Stephen Colbert. I think he's a brilliant man, just a late night talk show. When he left the Daily Show and he was working with Jon Stewart, remember the first show he did was called The Colbert Report?
Yes.
It was a parody.
Yes.
Of right-wing radio.
Yes.
He was parodying Rush Limbaugh and people can relate to Joe Rogan and things like that. Yeah. It was not who Stephen Colbert was, but he did it for you, and the ratings were off the roof. He even got invited to host the White House Correspondents' Dinner one year from the Bush White House because they thought that was what he was really all about.
Yes.
And they were shocked when he finally got up there, and he was critical because he's a centrist or left of center guy.
Yeah.
But he was playing a character. And I know people in our business that play a character every time they get in front of the microphone.
Right.
And that's a choice they make. But the problem is, and you're an actor, so you know this, do you want to be that character 24 hours a day? Because you have to be. Once you accept that persona and you want to be that persona, you pretty much have to be that person all the time. And some of them, by the way, are. They really are as crazy as they seem to be, whether they're broadcasting or whatever the case might be. And that's tragic. But I know others that are playing a role, a part. And it's got to be physically and emotionally draining to do that. I find it's a lot easier to simply be yourself.
Yeah.
And this is who I am. This is how I feel about these sorts of things. Let's have a conversation, agree to disagree, and do it in a fashion where there's some respect. No matter what you're talking about or who you're talking about, you have to bring that level of respect to the conversation. And I find that approach has worked for me over the years. But at the same time, I think what it does is also it brings people in to say, let's have a rational discussion. I can still have my extremist views about some of these issues, but I know that, okay, even if I don't want to hear the other side, I have to accept the fact that there is another side to this discussion and this argument too. And I think in the passage of time, the majority of people are most comfortable with that. There's always going to be that element that say, no, I only want to read these newspapers or listen to this podcast because what they do is they reinforce the anger that I already have. And if that's what they want to do, I can't stop them. But I'd rather say, hey, can we have a much broader discussion about this? Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever looked at it from this standpoint? Right. How do you think that person over there feels about it? It's impacting them differently than you. So can you understand why they're responding the way that they are?
Right.
And I like to think that there's enough civility left in our society right now that people will still say, let's approach it that way. Sometimes I have my doubts, when we see the way things are going, globally and even here in
Yeah.
North America these days. But you can't give up on that. You can't simply say, okay, fine, I capitulate. There's got to be, and I guess I'm appealing to the good angels and everybody to say, not necessarily to agree with me, but to say, let's look at it from different perspectives and understand that there can be different points of view. And with the beaver, the eager beaver, we're Canadian, eh?
Right.
And by and large, I think most Canadians are kind of middle of the road. We like our comfort level. Yes, some of us, are center left. Some of us are center right. There are extremes on both sides. We get
Right.
that. But as Canadians, as a population, we're kind of right there.
Yep.
We have respect globally for that reason, because we're not crazy. We're not extremists. And I think you have to appeal to that, because I think what I'm trying to do here is reach people in that comfort level, which I think is the majority of Canadians, and you do the same thing
Yep.
on your show too. And I think that's one of the things that people are looking for right now. I remember when we started in radio, of course, you have consultants. If you can't do, you're a consultant, right? If you can't perform, you're a consultant. And I have a great deal of respect for them. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. But they would always say, and one of the things I learned first of all in radio was people can say, I listen to Bill every day. Why? It makes me feel good.
Yeah.
If somebody doesn't make you feel, if you watch somebody or listen to somebody and you're angry or you're on edge listening to them and angry, even if you're agreeing with them, it's not healthy for you. You feel like shit psychologically, physically sometimes.
Yes.
That's not good. And eventually that's going to catch up and people get sick of it. I remember I told the story years ago when my son was younger, starting in high school, and I had the minivan then, of course, and I'm driving about 5 or 6 of them up to school. Dad, turn on Howard Stern, and that was when Howard was into the rather risque stuff that he was doing, talking about body parts and vaginas and all this other stuff and titillating, I guess, and that's okay, fine, that's what you want to listen to. One of the stations in Toronto was carrying his show at the time. And after about 3 or 4 weeks, they said, no, I don't want to listen to that anymore. It's tiring. Yeah. And I figured that's exactly the way people respond.
Right.
Not to Howard, but Howard has evolved.
Right.
He's not that guy anymore. He's one of the best interviewers in broadcasting. He does a great show. But he's evolved. And if you read his last book, he basically said, you know what? I was an idiot. I was an asshole for years. And they paid me a lot of money to be an asshole. But, it was a persona that he was putting on.
Right.
And eventually the mask falls.
Right.
And if I don't have a mask, but I'm bearing my soul. This is who I am. This is who you are. Yeah. And it's a lot more comfortable. And I think that's one of the reasons why the viewers can actually develop that relationship and that bond with you, because they know, there's no mask here. This is who I am. That's who you are. And the reason they're watching is because they know that, they accept that with all the warts and the imperfections, etc. But that's the relationship. And I think that's one of the things that you always strive for. And I think that's one of the reasons why you do this every day and why I do this every day too, because we get as much out of that relationship as the listener and the viewers do.
Yeah, I agree. And the mask is exhausting.
Yeah,
it is after a while. What was it about broadcasting? Because, how did you fall into it, and what have you noticed over your career? Because things are much different now.
Yeah,
clearly. What evolution have you noticed? Because for me, I wasn't a broadcaster back then, but I mean, I'm still old enough to remember when we had 3 or 4 channels, and you had your morning newspaper and you had your evening newspaper, and if something happened in the evening, you had to wait till the whole next morning before you would get an update. And now everything is 24/7, and it's instant, and it's hot takes, a lot of hot takes. And as I mentioned before, the world is sort of flattened, that everybody can be a content producer and a publisher. There's a lot of people that are calling themselves journalists that are not. And putting the word citizen in front of it still doesn't make you a journalist, because there are certain foundational principles of journalism that you have to agree to accept. And if you don't, then you may be doing something, you're producing content, but you're not doing journalism. Right.
Yeah. Well, there are guardrails, and there always have been. I mean, and again, I'm not going to say back in the old days, but, back in the old days, I mean, you wanted to write a nasty letter to the editor of a newspaper, for instance. The process, as I understood it, was you had to sign your name, your real name, and your address, and a contact phone number, whatever the case might be, to make sure you were a real person. And in case there was feedback or whatever the case might be, they could get back to you if in fact they decided to publish it. And the same thing with radio. There were rules and situations. And you're right. Before we had the 24/7 news cycle, newscasters or talk show hosts, you basically picked up the newspaper and said, "Oh, we're going to talk about." And even then, talk radio was probably somewhat immediate then, but still, the news you were getting was probably 24 hours old by the time you opened your newspaper and read it.
Right.
So there was that element, and that's changed now. And I think probably the way it's evolved now, and I think we still see this in podcasts. And it's the first rule I learned when I got into radio, is be prepared. In other words, I read voraciously. When I was, for years and years, the TV show, it was a noon till, it was only a 1 hour show, but it was seen actually internationally because it was on the satellite. So we got calls from Sweden and all over the place. It was kind of fun. But the radio show was 9 to noon. I was up just almost as, about 3:30 in the morning. I'd get up and put about 6 hours work into a 3 hour show every day.
Right.
And I absorb information. In the old days, on the way into the radio station, I'd pick up the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, the local paper or whatever else, and as much as I could get, and read. Now, of course, everything's online.
Right.
So I can get the New York Times, I can get all these other things, and it's all up here. You store this information. I may not use it that day.
Right.
I may not use it for a week. I may not, but it's there.
Right.
Because when you're doing this kind of show, as you do, you need to have that foundation, that basis of information. So I'm talking to a politician or I'm talking to a performer, whatever the case might be, and something comes into my head that all of a sudden is very relevant to the conversation, which wouldn't have been there if I hadn't done that research. So you can bring that, and that's one of the ways that you can enhance the conversation that you're having with the guest, or maybe value added to a conversation about an event or a political happening or whatever the case might be. Information is the key, and that's always been, I guess, important, but it was less important back in those days because the information wasn't always available. So it wasn't anticipated that necessarily was going to be one of the strengths of whoever was hosting the show.
Okay.
I think it's imperative now that you got to know what you're talking about, or you got to know a little bit about everything, and sometimes a lot about everything, as the case might be, which means you have to put a lot of work into a situation like that. You can't show up. People would say, "Oh, you only work 3 hours a day." I said, "I wish." As I say, twice as many hours preparing the show. And as my wife will tell you, I used to get home at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, let the dogs out and everything, and I was back on the computer in the afternoon,
Yep.
still kind of not necessarily preparing for the show the next day, but educating myself, informing myself. It always has to be there because you're always on, and you never know what's going to happen.
Right.
And to your point, you have to learn to go with the flow in situations like that. The first time we were doing Talk Live, we started at 9 o'clock in the morning when I was on CH, and the show became very popular. And after about 5 or 6 months, they decided we're going to make it an hour show, and you're going to run at noon. That way we can catch the West Coast audiences and everything else. Okay, fine. September 11th is the first day we're going to go noon.
Oh.
Okay. And who knew? Who knew?
Yeah.
I was on the air from 12 that day until 10 o'clock at night. Co-hosting the live coverage. This is the epitome of breaking news.
Right.
And you're flying without, there's no net below you, there's no script because you don't know what's going to happen from 1 minute to the next.
Yeah.
We're trying to,
in a situation like that, you have no idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah. But again, the preparation, as tidbits of information would flow and sometimes misinformation.
Right.
The old joke about when I was saying, the nightmare used to have I can't play music and what am I going to do to talk? In this case, I'm talking consistently for 10 hours. I have co-hosts coming and going in the whole situation, and we're getting bits of information. And we're going to go to New York now because we had a guy from Hamilton that just happened to be there, and that was great to have that sort of a lifeline. But
right.
it's all ad-libbing, and it's all.
Right.
And you have to go with the flow, and you have to be in charge. You can't be, oh my God, what's happening? No, you've got to be a level-headed approach to this, and remind yourself of the fact that it's now 2:30 in the afternoon. I've been doing this for the last little while, but somebody just tuned in. So I got to bring them up to speed as to what's going on without boring the people that have been there. So it's one of these things that you talk about the rush on stage. That's the rush doing this.
Yeah.
Is some people think, I hope everything goes exactly the way it's supposed to be planned. Sometimes you don't want it to go the way. Sometimes you want those aberrations because it shows you that you can respond and react, and that's when you can really, I think, gain a perspective about what the listeners are looking for, because it's just happening for them too, and to bring that human approach to the whole thing. I mean, history says that America's favorite newscaster for years and years was Walter Cronkite, because they trusted him. And he was not just a news reader; he'd been a news correspondent and everything else, but he was the voice of reason and trust. And you look for that in a host, in a podcast host now, that level of trust. And I think that's changed right now. I think because of what's going on, and because it's 8:30 in the morning Eastern time as we're doing this. Things probably, what's happening in Gaza, what's happening with the peace talks in Ukraine, it's evolving. And they want that trust. They lean on you, they lean on me, and whomever else they may be and that's it's not a burden. It's a responsibility that we gladly take. And that wasn't always there before. I mean, you could just do the 11 o'clock news and then go home and forget all about it until the next day. And you go back and here's your script for the news now. Read these stories, run that clip, and then your job's finished. It's much more fluid now. And I like that. That's kind of into my wheelhouse. I think you and I were talking before we started the show today. I don't go into an interview, for instance, if I'm going to have you on the show or the prime minister, whoever it might be. I don't have 15 questions for the show. That's, to me, very boring. Here's the question. Here's the answer. And usually, by the way, 15 of those questions are probably the same 15 that the prime minister heard the day before and the day before. I want to have a conversation, and that's changed. Now, it's not free form. It's not, I got in my head what I want to talk about. Right. And I've got all this information that I want to get comments about and from the guest or whatever the case might be. But I like to keep it fresh, and I think spontaneity is what keeps it fresh, and that's different. I mean, everything used to be scripted before, and there's nothing wrong with that, because your job as an actor, for instance, is to bring that script to life every day,
and to not change it because the person chose those words with a specific intent.
Exactly, right. Exactly, and it's the same sort of thing here. I don't work off a script, and I kind of like that to freelance, but. That just swing back to my point from a few minutes ago, means that the responsibility is on me now to say, I better be prepared to be able to talk intelligently about what's happening these days. And when it happens, it. I can walk out of the studio after that 10-hour show during 9/11. I was on a high when I finished at 10 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
Because I thought, we did it. It's great tragedy. And of course, that hits you later on. But while you're doing it and while you're doing the show and presenting it, the adrenaline is rushing, and you get that rush to think we're doing what we're supposed to be doing here. It wasn't scripted. I'm not just reading something that somebody else prepared. I'm explaining life as it's happening, and people felt as if, okay, that's why they wanted to stay watching or listening or whatever the case might be, because they're going through that journey, and I'm their partner through that journey. And that's that bond, and that wasn't always that way with talk radio. It wasn't even that way when I started doing talk radio. People would say, I had one program director, one of my bosses years ago. Monday morning, he came into the office and he said, "I want to see the lineup for what you're going to be doing all week long." And I said, "I don't know what I'm going to do all week long. I don't know what tomorrow's going to be. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. How can I do a relevant talk show?" And by planning ahead, life happens. I said, "I'll tell you tomorrow morning what I'm going to do on the show tomorrow." I'll be prepared and etc. But I don't know who I'm going to have on, relevant to the stories that people are talking about. It changes. And that's the way he was referring to the way they used to want to do talk radio. I want to see what you're going to do. And I see that there's an element, if you're going to have a superstar on, because I've had celebrities on the show over the years. Right. One of my favorite comedians of all time, Bob Newhart, I had a chance to interview him. You can't just pick up the phone and call Bob Newhart or Martin Short. Those have to be planned. I get that. Right. But that's fine, because they've got schedules too. But the other element, that when you're talking about life and what's happening with current events, etc., we have no way of knowing what's going to be happening. And so you have to be prepared for just about anything. Yeah. And that's the rush for me. That's why I still love doing this each and every day. because it's, as you say, it changes every day. Your show is different, and how you take a topic is maybe going to be somewhat different than mine. I remember the show you did just after the budget came down. And of course, variations on the theme. Everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got a perspective about what's going to be happening. And you spent a lot of time that day on the podcast talking about the impact it was having on Quebec, and Mr. Blanchette's response to it, and tying it into some of the past policies, et cetera. And I found it fascinating, because I thought there's a take that probably a lot of people need to know and say, yeah, where are these guys coming from, and how's this impact? Quebec is an important part of this whole process. And in Eastern Ontario and in the prairie provinces, we don't always get that. But you brought a perspective, a very important perspective, that I wouldn't have got anywhere else. And you see, so mission accomplished as far as you were concerned. It was relevant information, very germane to the discussion and the debate, because we want to know what's impacting and why is he doing what he's doing, why is he saying what he's saying, and you nailed that. I try to do that with different perspectives too, and I think that's one of the jobs that as hosts that we need to do is okay. This is what 90% of the people are going to see. This is what CBC is going to do. This is what we're going to see TV. I don't try to be different for the sake of being different.
Right.
I want to say, okay, what else can we bring to the party? What perspective can we bring? And that's what makes it fresh for your show and for my show. I think each and every day is bringing that different perspective and looking, as I say, a wider lens about the key issues. You're not going to get the same thing that you're going to get from a 25-minute interview. It used to bug me. I was doing talk radio. It said interviews have to only be 7 minutes long, because we had a break for commercials. We want to do this. I said, I don't even get to say hi in 7 minutes. Okay.
Right.
How can you get to know your guest? How can you get, what you want out of that guest in only 6 or 7 minutes? So I often defy that. In the interest of full disclosure, I do 20, 25-minute interviews. And my boss would give me shit each and every day. And I said, was it a good interview? He says, yeah, it was great. And I said, well, I rest my case. You've got to take that approach, and you've got to evolve. And I think, I said, your formula is what some boss told you and what some consultant said is how you should do talk radio. It's not relevant to my audience. They like what I'm doing. And I guess whoever was doing talk radio back in those days, you wouldn't have that flexibility, but we do now. And I think it's all for the better. I mean, that's a positive, I think, evolution that's happened, which is why it's so easy, I think, to transition to podcast now, where we can talk an hour and a half, 2 hours if we want about something, or 3 hours if we want, or 10 minutes if we want. Depends. And that wasn't always the way. We've gotten away from hard and fast formula. And there's nothing wrong with structure. Structure is still important, but there has to be some flexibility. And you show that in your podcast, and we try to do that in ours too. And it's one of the reasons why I'm still doing this after all these years, because it's still fun and it's still invigorating, and it still gives you that adrenaline rush each and every day. And it's easier on my knees. I know you got bad knees too.
Yes.
You can still do this because you just, it's all up here. This is where your performance is coming from. Yeah. And you can't dance like you did when you were 19 years old. There's a lot of stuff you can't do, but keep the mind active, keep learning, always keep learning. And that way you're always going to be productive, and you're always going to have that perspective and that insight into the issues. And I think that's what people are looking for these days.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because there's certain things that I can't do, but there's other things that I can do is have more flavor, if you could say, to them, because I have 50 years of experience now, right? Behind stuff. I know the difference between like an arm here and an arm there or something, or, like an extra little sway or an extra little push there, or, a look in your eye as you're doing a certain move. I'm suave and debonair, or something, right? Like that's how all these. I have to do that for this show, so I've been practicing that one a lot. But all those things, like I said, the things that you can no longer do like this, okay, you can't do them, but there are things that you can do that now you do better than anyone else, because you've been doing them for so long and you've been adding layers and layers and layers. So I find that part interesting. And when you were talking about, how much you consume, because today it's different. It's almost like I always think of my mind as this weird filing cabinet. like this, that I just like all the stuff that I've been learning about politics and that I've been following, because I've been doing the show for 5 years, but I had it as a written blog for 10 years before. And I've always been interested in politics. I think my first job in university was doing media monitoring, and it was just, then that's like, oh my God, I know everything that's going on in the country today, because I've done in all subjects, because you're like classifying the articles to give to
Yeah.
all the MPs and whatnot like this, but you're reading like this. And my partner at the time, I would go home, so what happened in the world today? And, I would just give them the whole rundown, like I was a newscast, because I read, pretty much every major story
Sure.
in every major paper and small ones in the country, as I was like, doing the media monitoring for it. And all of this goes in here like this, and we're doing a show like a lot of that stuff about Quebec, when you were talking about the budget thing, was all stuff, I had been listening to stuff over the course of the last weeks and the last months and whatnot, and then all of a sudden it's like I'm very fascinated by people and behaviors and what motivates people and why
Mhm.
people do the things they do. And, well, 3 months ago you said this, and now you're saying this, and these things are not the same. What has changed in there? And if there's nothing that's changed on the surface, then what conditions have changed, or what feedback have you gotten, what you've been doing before, and how are you trying to adapt? And I like to look at all of these things. Um, but I'm just wondering for you, it's like if your mind is this like weird filing cabinet that all of a sudden it's like you hear something, and there's a dot that you connect with something that happened 5 years ago, with what happened 3 years ago, and that relationship with that person. It's like all this like jumbled thing of all these like little points, and all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, but this dot connects to this one, and you bring it all together, and all of a sudden, you're popping it out. And the longer you do this, the bigger the filing cabinet, and sort of like the better your recall or retrievability. And it's just, you're making connections between things that are not the hot take first layer ones that you will get on the instant, this just happened, we're giving you the breaking news type thing,
Mhm.
that you have time to go back, and it's just a couple of levels deeper.
Well, I'm still amazed. The internet, I think the internet's going to catch on. I think people are really going to get into this. But I love Google, because I can say, where did General Brock spend the night before the Battle of Queenston Heights? Where was it? And within 5 seconds, I get the answer.
Mhm.
Whereas in the past, I'd have to, I'll go downtown to the library. I got to go to
Right.
the reference section, get this out, and about a day later, I'd probably find the information. Your mind works like that too. I mean, and we don't always use the capacity. You can do that. If it's in there, and just like it's all that information that Google has access to, which is everything, in seconds, and sometimes in 1 second, they, of all this massive body of information, can find exactly what you're looking for. Bingo, there it is. We can do that too. But you've got to have the information in there to begin with.
Right.
And it's amazing how we can be talking about Broadway shows or Quebec politics or whatever the case might be, and your brain is listening to what you're saying, and at the same time saying, it's like, remember when Netflix came out and said, if you like this, you might be interested in this. And your brain is telling you the same thing. Oh, they're talking about premier, or it could be anybody, Doug Ford in Ontario, whatever the case might be, and all of a sudden your brain is saying, "Oh, here's more information about Facebook," and it's going through, and this could be relevant to the conversation. You're talking about this, and that's I think what contributes to the conversation, and your brain is actually active. That's why I don't get into this thing about, I'm just going to read the question and and listen, and not even listen to your answer, because I'm more important. I'm thinking, okay, what's the next question going to ask?
Right.
It's a conversation, and it's like, you have to exercise your brain just as much as you have to exercise your muscles and your body. And if you keep that fresh, and if you keep that information going, then it will respond in kind. And I think that's one of the things that I take great pride in, is that I'm always feeding information to myself, and it's always going to be there. And the more that you call on it, you're absolutely right. The faster and the more efficient it becomes in situations like that.
Right.
And I think that's one of the keys to what you're doing and what I'm doing, is to keep not just the information itself, but to have that automatic recall, to have that Google in your head that said, I can talk about this, and then it's all of a sudden going to bring all these other relevant stories or facts sometimes that are so relevant. Remember Cliff Claiborne and Cheers? Yeah,
Right.
That reminds me of the time. He always said there's useless information,
Right.
and we all have useless information, but we also
Lots
have
of it.
very relevant information sometimes too that we can bring, but it's got to be in there in the first place.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I think is what drives me to always just read and talk and watch and observe. And that's one of the things that I don't think people spend a whole lot of time doing these days. We get so busy doing this, and we've got this function, we've got this responsibility. Sometimes just observing and listening to what other people are saying can be extremely important, extremely educational, and that sort of thing. I think no matter what it's stored, and that opinion, that fact, whatever is something that you can recall. And as I say, you don't know when it's going to come out and when it's going to be relevant, but it's got to be there in the first place.
Right.
So I know that you read voraciously, you observe, you're looking at what's going on, you talk to people. They say one of the big criticisms is the younger generation these days, they just spend their whole freaking time in their basements in front of a computer screen, which can be good or bad. But get out there and let's see what's going on in the world. Talk to people and get engaged with them and get the human touch to what's going on, because that's what I think a lot of people are craving for these days. And it's one of the things that I think we have to bring to the discussion. And I love the fact that I can read something today that I may not even have to reference for another year, or it might be tomorrow morning. You don't know. And some of the stuff is useless information, but it's there, and yet at some point it's going to come into the conversation. About General Brock was in Queenston Heights the day before, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And it's all a matter of doing that homework, and being prepared and just being informed. That's one of the taglines of my show. Stay in touch and stay informed.
Right.
Because that's never going to do you wrong to have that information. What you
Right.
do with it is up to you, but get the information first of all. And that's one of the things that I love about the evolution of what we're doing now with podcasting, as opposed to the talk radio. And I think it's one of the things that gets you in front of the microphone and me in front of the microphone each and every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I believe that being informed is a choice.
Yeah.
Nowadays,
Sure.
specifically, right? Because today you can choose to be misinformed or choose to have your confirmations, your biases affirmed and confirmed. But to actually actively seek to be informed with quality information, not just what makes you feel good or what confirms what you already believe or makes you feel secure, even new information that could destabilize you a little bit or make you uncomfortable, make you question. That's the thing today, like this, and with all the options that you have for your time and your attention, I guess actually making choices to be informed. It's a more active decision, because back in the day, like I said, you had the Walter Cronkites and they were trusted, or Peter Mansbridge, or and you could sit in front like this and know that they have done the work and trust that they have done the work and that you're getting the best information available. But that's not the situation anymore.
Well, it's easier to simply fall into line. We just talked about what we just described. It takes effort, and not everybody wants to. Some people say, I haven't got the time. Well, you have to make the time to do something like that to be informed.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier to simply, just spew out what you've already heard, especially if it seems in some way, shape, or form to conform with your thought process on an awful lot of the stuff. I mean, we see what's going on politically now with with Trump and some of these things, and some of the response I see on some of the platforms. It's mind-boggling to see. People don't really believe that, do they? Come on. If you are a patriot, there's a phrase that they love to throw around an awful lot. You know damn well what the Constitution says. You know what the laws are. You know that these are the powers of the president. These are the powers of the Supreme Court. This is the power of the, and you know that they're abusing those powers. But you choose not to see that and believe, because it's, it would take work to make that determination. I'd have to look it up. I'd have to listen to contrary opinions. It's a lot easier for me to just say, yeah, this is the way I feel because this is what he put on Truth Social or whatever the case might be.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why we got lazy, but we did. Maybe it's because we're open and exposed to so much information right now that we get overwhelmed and simply say, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to listen to what they say on Fox News. I'm going to listen to this podcast because it reinforces my biases, such as they are. We don't want to look for information, and I think we kind of have to step back a little bit and say we got to get back to that. And I'm not suggesting, as I say, that everything is going to change everybody's opinion. But we're a lot less tolerant than we used to be. And you know,
Mm.
in this day and age, with the massive availability of information, you would have thought the opposite were true, but it's
Mm.
not. And you know, the day I figure that out, I guess, is you know, the day we can all figure that out as to why that's happening. But it is happening, and it's a huge obstacle, and it's a huge challenge, I think, for all of us to tear that curtain open and say, wait a second, what about all this information? And
Mhm.
it's one of the things I think that gets me going every day. It's just is to at least attempt to do that. And the feedback I hear from the viewers on the podcast is thanks for exposing that. Don't always agree, but that's a different perspective. Oh, I didn't know that.
Right.
And you know, certainly you have to. And again, you have to separate opinion from fact sometimes, and that can be a blurry line. Uh, but it's up to you as a host and me as a host to say, you know, this is my opinion, but these are the facts. There's a famous quote from Senator Patrick Moynihan, who was a senator in New York back in the 1960s, when he was debating, I can't remember who it was, one of his Republican opponents. He says, "You are certainly entitled to your own opinion, but you are
Mm.
not entitled to your own facts.
Mhm.
These are the facts,
Right.
irrefutable, and they're not debatable. These days, it's opinion over fact."
Yeah.
And it's kind of frightening. You know, there's
Yeah.
one of my favorite authors. Reading her latest book is Louise Penny, great Canadian author. There's a phrase there from her hero Gamache, Inspector Gamache from the Sûreté in Quebec, and they talked about the way things are in the world these days. And the guy says, well, you know, what about the facts? And Gamache says, he says, fact has been replaced by fear. That's what
Mm.
people are working on now, and that's what politicians. That's their trade now, is fear. You
Mhm.
know, if the facts don't agree with the mandate that you want, or the line of thinking that you're trying to portray, then you work on fear. You know, they're eating our cats and dogs. You know, those people coming from across the border are all rapists and murderers. It's fear. Those aren't
Mhm.
facts, but fear plays on people, and it's a great way to motivate people.
Yeah.
Always has been, and
Yeah.
sadly, that seems to be the commentary for a lot of folks. And it's one of the things that you're fighting and that I'm fighting is, you know, don't be naive, but at the same time, don't let that consume you. Facts still matter, and they always should matter.
Yes.
And sometimes we lose that perspective.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like the being informed is the antidote, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Um, I want to ask about, because in our show we talk about on our show we talk a lot about democracy being something that you do.
Hmm.
Yes. And you had some experience where you left broadcasting for a while and decided to do some public service. And I was wondering how that experience was, but also like how your experience in broadcasting up until then helped you with that. And now that you've had that experience in terms of doing public service, how that has affected your broadcasting afterwards.
And it has. It had a huge impact. And you're right. Doing what I did before that, uh, I think prepared me for that. I mean, you know, I had opinions. Obviously, we all have opinions. And you know, when I was going through one of the phases there, broadcasting, and again, there was some downsizing back in the late 1990s that I got swept up in, as a lot of other people did. And within about 5 hours of the announcement that, okay, that was just his last show, I had dozens of people. You got to run. You got to run. You know, the municipal elections were coming up just a few months from then. And my first, you know, answer was absolutely not. You know, those are the people I talked to. I don't want to get into the, but they talked me into it, and I was fortunate enough. I won. I knocked off a guy who'd been there for 23 years and got my feet wet and got in there. And I did what 10 years on city council, and it was eye opening. It was different perspective altogether, but by the same token, again, using that same mantra. I needed to be informed. I mean, I had opinions on why,
Right.
you know, the taxes were going up or not going up, why my road wasn't getting fixed, why the snow didn't get plowed in time, and it gave me a whole different perspective as to why things were happening. So again, but it was me being informed. And some of the stuff is quite challenging, quite frankly, because all of a sudden you're in that council circle there, and it's like, you know, being in the Coliseum with the gladiators. You know, you're doing and everybody's up there watching, but they don't understand what's going into the battle, the preparation
Right.
that goes into it. And I had to educate myself on an awful lot of things. You know, I'm not a techie person. And you know, public works would come along. Well, that's all about sewers and this and that, and you know, and waste management and stuff like that. And it was mind-boggling. And you know, I'd have to vote on this stuff. Well, I had to know something about it.
Right.
So, I mean, I would pick the brains of the experts, the people that work there. And that was, I think, very helpful. But at the same time, you had to educate yourself. I mean, sometimes there'd be a report on such and such, and I'd have to read it 3 or 4 times. And I don't understand what they're talking about here.
Right.
So you have to get that clarity. So you put the work in, and you get that idea about, to use your phrase, about how the sausage is made, and it gives you a better appreciation for how the system works and how the process works, and how politicians think. I was exposed to a whole lot of people, especially, you think, oh, it's only municipal politics, but there's an interaction with municipal politics between federal and provincial in this country.
Right.
There has to be, because some of the issues, overlap, and you're in constant contact with those people, and I can learn from them. They can learn from us about different perspectives too. So it gives me a much broader base about how the political system works, and who the players are, and who the sincere people are. Not all of them are. Most of them are. But there's a few pretenders that you have to understand, and they're there, and they've got the job too. So you've got to sometimes work around them, or sometimes work with them. So you learn that sort of discipline at the same time. But when I finally finished, and I left on my own accord, I simply said, okay, I'll run, which I did. And I said, I'll stay for 3 terms, and then I'm getting out. That's all there is to it. And I did. A lot of people, well, come on, you could be mayor someday. I said, I did it. I ought to be, say, been there, done that, but I want to move on. I want to get back into it, which I did, and got back into the talk radio show. But it's funny, even while I was doing politics, it's I feel like, Michael Corleone in Godfather 3. Every time I try to leave, they pull me back in.
It's its own drug.
It happened.
Yeah.
Within about a month after I got elected to city council, the local cable company came on. I did a couple of interviews, like, what's it like? Hey, you were a guy in broadcasting, and now you're doing this, and talk to us about this. And after about 2 different interviews, the general manager said, how would you like to do a show here? I said, I've got a job. I'm busy. And he says, it's an hour a day. He says, we're 5 minutes away from City Hall. And when you can't do it, you can't do it. And I said, okay, fine. So I did that, and it was great. And then I said, okay, that's it. Another election came along 3 years, and I said, okay, I've got to go off the air anyway. So I'm just going to focus on politics, which I did, and I was fortunate enough to get reelected. And again, full circle, having a reception at the Chamber of Commerce, and the new owners of Channel 11 came in. Global had just purchased them, and this guy, the general manager, and I met him, very cordial. He said, you wrote us a letter of support for the license. I said, yeah. I said, well, thank you for that. Have a good day. Have a nice life and everything. And that was great. He called me the next day. And he said, I went back to my hotel, and I was watching the stuff on cable. And he says, that's the guy I was talking to. And he said, how would you like to do a talk show on Channel 11? And again, I said the same thing. I'm busy. And he said, you're literally a block away. So he said, same thing. Do the show, work around it. And if there's, if you're busy with meetings and stuff like that, we'll get somebody else to host it, which happened an awful lot of the time. But I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. And I did that for 5.5 years or so, both careers. And it was like it was in my blood. Yeah. And so I never really left broadcasting. So when I finally said, okay, I've done my term on politics, I'm moving on now, it was really a transition to simply go back to what I was already doing. It's not like I had to knock on doors and say, hey, remember me? Right. I was still doing it. I just moved back in, coincidentally, back into full-time radio. And then, of course, the television thing evolved from there again. So it was always there. And it goes back to what we talked about, I think, earlier in our conversation. There's always going to be a door to go through. You just have to find out where it is. And it's always been there. And it's something that you have to look at these opportunities and say, is this what I want to do? How can I transition this? And is this, the best thing for me? I never thought about, was this going to be great for my career? My career is ever evolving. And it was just, you take the opportunities and try to make the most of them. And it's always worked out for me. So I've always had this penchant. I mean, even when I was a little kid playing baseball, going across the road in the summertime, and we'd help, remember the all day baseball games, and, going, oh, Jimmy, it's time for lunch. Well, somebody else would come in. Okay, I'll play shortstop. So the games went on all day long, but I always had a radio with me. I always had a transistor radio on the bench or whatever. Because I was fascinated, obviously, with the music. I mean, I grew up at an age where the Beatles were just starting to get big, and a little older than you are in situations like that. But I always listened to the announcers too, the disc jockeys, right, to their patter, to their rhythm, to their delivery, and I was always fascinated by that, which was always I think something that surprised an awful lot of people, because I was a very shy guy. I mean, I was the sort of kid when I was little. I was afraid to put my hand up in class to answer a question. I knew the answers, but
Okay.
I didn't want to be the center of attention. I didn't want people looking at me. It
Wow.
embarrassed me, and that's why years and years later, when I got into this business, I had all sorts of people who called me and say, "You're not the same Bill Kelly that went to school." Yeah, that's me. I said, "Holy shit! What happened?" I said, I just kind of found my comfort level."
Huh.
And I'm fortunate. Not everybody gets to do that,
Yeah.
but I just found some place where all of a sudden I'm comfortable doing what I'm doing. I'm comfortable being me, and now I'm comfortable to stand in front of people. I mean, I'm sure when you were a kid, you sweat bullets when we all had to get up in front of the English class and recite a passage from Shakespeare. We had to memorize that. The quality of mercy is not strained, and it scared the hell out of me to go and do that. And finally, it evolved to the point where I remember one program director said, "You want to do talk radio one day?" He says, "I can't shut you up. You're supposed to spend you have 20 seconds to introduce the record, Bill, and then you're supposed to turn the mic off. You go on and on and on. So why don't I pay you to do that?" And that's basically how I switched and transitioned from doing music into this. And it's one of these things where I just enjoy it now. I'm informed. I got a lot of stuff in my head right now that I want to talk to people about and listen to what they've got to say too. And I'm the same character as you. I like people. I like
Mm.
engaging with people. And I never found a platform I was comfortable with until I got into broadcasting. And I figured, this is it. This is my wheelhouse.
Hmm.
And it's great when you can find that. Because as I say, not everybody is fortunate enough to do that,
Right.
to be able to find something where they've got a comfort level. And it sounds like a cliche to say, "Hey, I love going to work every day," but I did.
Hmm.
I did, and still do.
Hmm.
Now it's just a matter of coming downstairs into our little studio here and doing our thing. But it's still it's a rush for me to do this, and it's a rush for you to get on stage, and it's a rush for you to do this each and every day too. You can up way too early too. Actors don't get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You know that. You shouldn't
Typically
be
not.
doing this.
No.
So actors are going to bed at 5 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
and here you are coming to do this, and there's got to be a reason you do it,
Yeah.
because it's a rush. You love it.
Oh, I do. I very, 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 very much do. I didn't think I was going to because I liked writing,
Yeah,
and I was okay with that. And then when we started doing podcasts, which was just voice, and we weren't doing YouTube. And already putting my own voice to my own thoughts and words was weird because writing is different. And I was writing under the Eager Beaver, so nobody knew my face, knew my name, knew my
mhm.
so it was, and things were just growing organically. It was more word of mouth. People found it and would recommend it to other people. And, I wasn't promoting. It was just a hobby.
Sure.
And then COVID hit, and I had to switch things up. Um, but when we started doing YouTube, it was the same thing. It's like, okay, like I'm now comfortable with my own voice saying my own words, but now I'm going to be putting my face, right? And it's going to be my, it's still the Eager Beaver, but people know my real name now, and
Yeah,
all that kind of stuff. And when you open that door, you attract certain things also that are not necessarily positive. Um, but y- there was like some fear and trepidation. Do I really want to take this step to put this associated with what I say, knowing that it's politics and knowing that it's opinions, and that some people just get really upset if you dare say something that does not fit with their vision of the world. And while I still, even though it's been a couple of years, still have some trepidation because w- we're not we're big enough that a couple of people every now and then will try something, but not big enough that we get it on a routine daily
yeah.
basis. Let's put it
Mhm.
that way. And I know that at some point, well, I hope at some point that we would be big enough that we would reach enough people. But I don't hope that that other stuff would come too, but it just comes with the territory,
Oh, sure
right?
it does.
That
Sure it
that's
does.
going to happen one day. Um,
But what you do, and this is why I think there's a certain trepidation when you did that transition. Now all of a
yeah,
sudden, here I am, as opposed to just the writing aspect of this is you're vulnerable. You've exposed yourself.
yes,
This is my face. This is my name. This is
yes,
who I am. And that's difficult. And it goes back to me being so shy, I guess, when I was a kid. And I was difficult. I mean, I always used to say, hey, I got a face for radio. That's why I'll go into radio. And it was difficult to transition into doing television, which I,
Right.
and everybody said, this is natural for you. And I said, well, it's not natural for me. It's difficult because you're throwing yourself out there.
Right.
But it opens up a whole different opportunity. My wife and daughters would still, we'd go to the store and you're an hour and a half behind because everybody stops to talk. Hey, Bill, and they want to talk to you about this, that, or the other thing. I just came in to get, milk and bread, but all of a sudden, you get into these conversations, and that's great. It can be sometimes taxing. I always enjoy doing that sort of thing, but it's because you're vulnerable. But I think people appreciate that you have enough concern and respect for them as an audience that here I am. I'll be vulnerable. Now you be vulnerable with me. I want you
Right.
to be, take that mask off for you and let's have that honest relationship. And again, people don't always get that, and you give it to them, and I try to give it to them every day. Always did with what I was doing, and I think a lot of people find that refreshing. That there's no veneer, and there are people in our job that still have that veneer, and they put on the act every day, and that's fine, I guess, if that's what they're into. And there's always going to be an audience for that. But I think what you are, and I think what people appreciate, is authentic, and that's something that people, I think, are always going to gravitate toward.
Yep. I've believed that for a long time. I've believed it in politics. I've believed it there's particularly now, there's a thirst for authenticity.
Yeah.
It's one of those reasons I think, Donald Trump is doing so well, because a lot of people believe that that's his authentic self, like it or not. Right. Like this, you're always going to get what he thinks. I personally do not necessarily believe that myself, but I believe that he's very good at making people believe that what he's presenting is his authentic self.
Yeah, and where in reality he's a fabrication.
Yeah.
He's but it's like when the lie becomes legendary, then the lie becomes fact, and sadly that's a reality.
Well, like you said,
he's not a successful businessman.
Yes.
No, he was not a great businessman. I mean, this whole thing about The Apprentice, that was all scripted. People think, oh no, he was. No, he wasn't. He didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And the same thing with the failed businesses. But people want to believe what they're going to believe. They like that persona, that strength, and that's what he is. Well, he's not. And like I say, there's always going to be an audience for that. But I think people would more often than not grab and go back to that idea about authenticity. I think that people are a lot more comfortable knowing that there's somebody that's real, and they're not afraid to show their vulnerabilities, and as opposed to wearing this facade and this mask and things like that. And I'd like to think that we're going to get back to that. More and more people are going to start looking for that in politicians and hosts and things of this nature too. I think it's one of our saving graces that I think we still want that, and it's within each and every one of us. And we're looking for it in other people right these days. As Bono says, we're still haven't found what I'm looking for, but you have to keep looking, right?
Yep, indeed. Yeah, you got to kiss the 1,000 princes, cut the 1,000 frogs before you meet a prince.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask, because I know my co-host Mr. Grizzly would be very upset if I did not ask. You also had 13 years, I think it is, as an announcer for the Tiger Cats.
Yeah, stadium announcer.
So, number one, how does that? I mean, I know you're a broadcaster, so maybe he's got a voice and he's respected, but how does that happen in the first place? And I cannot imagine a much more fun job than that.
No, it was a piece of heaven doing that. I was born and raised in Hamilton, obviously, and if you're born and raised in Hamilton, you bleed black and gold with the Tiger Cat colors. Right. My dad was a huge football fan. Great guy, and had many jobs. He was a fantastic dad, but he had a scrapbook for the Hamilton Tiger Cats, and guys didn't usually do that, but he was that much of a fan too. And I guess I kind of inherited the love for them, and of course the passion for it. So I grew up loving the Tiger Cats. Then I got into broadcasting, and of course, worked in Toronto for a fair bit of the time. When I got back into Hamilton, CHML, where I worked at the time, of course, carried the Tiger Cat games. And I did some play-by-play, but not a whole lot. for the other sports, but you get known, and and I'm bringing the guests in. The football team and the radio station had a very strong affiliation, so I got to know the coaches and the players, and it seemed a natural transition that they asked me. The guy that was doing it was leaving, and he'd been there for quite some time too. And they said, "How would you like to do it?" And I need to ask me twice,
Right.
and it was like, holy shit, this is fabulous. I mean, this is like a dream come true to be able to do that. I'm never going to play. Although I still, my tender age figure, I still got a shot. I could be a quarterback still. And you always have that vision. So here I am, going to the games. I mean, I went to my first football game. I think I was 10 years old. My dad took me to a game. And you fall in love with it. Same as live theater, live sporting events. It's a whole different vibe,
Right.
That you get into. And, as opposed to watching it on, black and white TV in those days,
Right.
to actually the vibrancy of being there in person. And it was a bug that I caught. The first job I got, full-time job, was first year of college. I was made a fair bit of money because, long story short, I was working like 60 hours a week. I bought Ticats season tickets before I paid my tuition because I wanted to be there. So it's always been in my blood. So transitioning into the broadcast booth and doing the PA there was just fabulous. And it was just great. I mean, good days and bad days. I mean, the team went through their trials and tribulations, but you're there and you're part of it. And
Right.
and again, there's that bond that you develop with, in this case, the audience, and the players too, for that matter. That you figure the old idea about, well, who's out there listening? They're all listening because you're giving the information. First down, the ball on the 25-yard line, your penalty is holding, whatever the case might be, and you can put your own little juice into it too. I still recall one story. There was a tackle. I forget, they were playing Montreal Alouettes, I think it was, arch rivals, and tackle made by and I mentioned, I forget who it was, Joe Monfort, okay, and Mike Campbell, who had actually been in on the tackle too, kind of looked up at the booth and went like this, and I said, and a great job by Mike Campbell too, and he just went, thank you, and I figure they're listening. They're actually, I'm not just this voice. They're listening to what I'm saying, and the guys on the field are listening to it too. It was really kind of a human moment, and it was kind of fun. And I had a lot of fun doing it for many, many years. It's one of those things where it was something you always look forward to because you never know what was going to happen, and you're there. But it's a job. I mean, it's fun. Yep. I mean, oftentimes people would say, "Oh, the Cats won." I say, "Yeah, what was the score?" I don't know. Because I'm busy. I'm reading scripts. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And I know they won, but I figure out what the score was. And I think it was pretty decisive too. But after you get back home, and as you say, you come down from the high and figured, oh yeah, it was 24-14 or something. But the same thing after you get off stage and you finish your performance. I'm sure it's one of those situations where you say, "What happened in Act 3? I don't know. I forget." But you'll remember later on because you get down on an even keel again too. You get psyched up for it. It's the highlight for me. Well, there's so many highlights, of course, almost on a daily basis. But I finally got to be the PA guy for the 1996 Grey Cup because it was in Hamilton for the first time in a long time. And usually the protocol, as I was told, was that no, we don't. The stadium announcer doesn't get to do that. We bring our own people in. They have to be bilingual and show. They probably saw my grade 9 French marks to figure, oh, it's not you, buddy. You're not going to make it. But they made kind of like a special thing for me, which I thought was really kind of cool. Yeah, you can do it. Okay. We'll bring in a francophone to do, any of the big announcements. And besides, we don't want to have somebody who's going to say first down, whatever it was. We just want the big announcements, between halves and stuff like that. So It worked out. That was for football fans. They may recall that was a snowball. It was 1996, first time in a long time the Grey Cup would be there. I went there the night before to kind of go over some stuff, and it was a rather mild November night, very, about 5 or 6 degrees. And I figured this is going to be great, be a good game, nice weather. We got lake effect snow off Lake Erie and Lake Ontario that day, and it snowed and snowed. It started about 9 o'clock in the morning, and it didn't stop until Tuesday. It was one of those things where it snowed all through the game. They had to stop every now and then and have the guys run across to make the yard markers. And
yes,
but it was a remarkably great game. There wasn't a lot of slipping and sliding, and it was outstanding. Toronto playing Edmonton. Doug Flutie was there. All these superstars, and I still love watching the replay every now and then when they show it on TSN because I can hear my voice in the background. Hey, that's me. That's it. It was just a really, really incredible experience to go through something like that and be part of CFL history. in my own little way. And
Right.
it's one of those things that those are the memories that you really hang on to, that you always look back and say, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, just to be able to, first of all, experience that and to cherish and hold those memories.
Hmm. W- w- Speaking as someone who's had that experience, what is it about, in your opinion, the CFL particularly that just connects with Canadians so much?
Well, it's a uniqueness, and I think it's just something that's different, that separates us from Americans. As I still remember a couple of years ago, the Super Bowl commercials where they have all the celebrities come on, and one of them was for Crown Royal, but they're in the bad books now, of course, because they're moving their part of their operation to the
Right.
States. So we don't buy that anymore. But back in those days, but it was Dave Grohl that did the commercial. Great musician, of course,
Right. Right.
great history. Not just with the Foo Fighters, but of course Nirvana before that.
Right.
And he got up there, and basically it was Crown Royal commercial, Canadian whiskey, and he started talking about sports and Canadian history, and it was an information piece for Americans that this was the Super Bowl, and he says, you realize football was invented in Canada,
Right.
and it was. Hockey was invented in Canada.
Right.
Baseball was invented in Canada. Abner
Basketball.
Doubleday had nothing to do with this.
Right.
Basketball, right down the list. Canada, Canada, Canada. And I think, you know what, we are always looking for ways to hang our hat on our national pride, especially these days, of course, with what's going on. But sports has always been a great, outlet for us to do that. This is our game, and it's unique. We don't imitate, although that's debatable now, but what's going on with American football.
That
It's
was
a
my next
different game.
question.
It's 3 downs. It's a bigger field. It's 110 yards, 65 yards wide, not 50. The first time I ever went to an American game was in Buffalo. It's closest, obviously, to where I was in Hamilton at the time. And the first thing that struck me, when you go up the walkway and the way your seats are, God, that field is so small. How the hell do they play? Holy shit! You take 2 steps and you're in the end zone already. But that's their field.
Right.
I hear that from guys. When I would talk to some of the players, the Americans that came up here. Holy shit! The size of the field. They'd stand at center field and say, "I'm going to throw a sideline pass to the wide receiver." Okay, that's a 35-yard pass just to get to the sideline.
Right.
It's a different game.
Right.
And there's 12 guys as opposed to 11.
Right.
And that was always when I talked to American quarterbacks, I said, "What's the hardest transition?" He says, "That other guy, that 12th guy." I didn't see him coming. It takes a while. Danny McManus, the great quarterback, who's a Hall of Famer, played in Hamilton. He said it took him about 4 years coming up here to learn the Canadian game because it's different. It's not just, I take the ball and throw it. It's a different idea, different technique, different size of the field, different strategies. And Anthony Calvillo did the same thing. I mean, he, great Montreal quarterback, but he sat on the bench for 3 years in Montreal before he actually became a starter and learned the game. We take pride in that. Yeah, this is different. This is Canadian. And the same thing, I think we'd take with hockey and with everything else. And there's a pride that the CFL is something that's truly Canadian. And it's had that history, the Grey Cup history that we talked about, and some of the great legendary stories about the games and the personalities that are involved in that. And the way this has evolved, and it's amazing. I get passionate about this because, as I say, my dad was such a big fan, and I grew up with the history and the stories. There were some great players back in the early 1960s, just around the time I was just a kid, but getting involved in that. But people like Angelo Mosca, who's a legend, and Bernie Filoni and Sam Echeverry. And I asked Ange Mosca, who became a very dear friend of my wife and mine in his later years. And I said, "Why'd you guys all come up here?" Because these guys were all Americans. He said, "You know what?" He says, this is going to be hard for you to believe. In those days, the CFL paid more. The NFL was a bush league back in those days. College football was the thing. And it was the big thing. The NFL was trying to find an audience, trying to find a home. They didn't dare play on Saturday because that was college football. Friday night was high school football. So they got stuck with Sunday. Well, who the hell watches sports on Sunday? In some states it was even illegal to do anything on Sunday.
Right. So
they had their growing pains, but they said, I made more money coming up here to Canada. And, it was maybe $5,000 a year as opposed to $2,000, but that's what attracted them. And of course they got up here, and how many of them stayed here? Because they just loved it. Hey, this is not just all igloos and caribou up here. This is a great country.
Right.
And we saw that happen with so many Americans that came up here, and we adopted them, and they become part of the fabric here. There's some great stories about people that all of a sudden have these preconceived ideas about what Canada's like, And I think Canadian football went a long way towards educating some people who came up here to realize that, hey, Montreal is one of the great cities in the world. Toronto's a fabulous city. It's not just wildlife walking through the main streets and stuff like this. That
Right.
there's cosmopolitan aspects to this, and we, I think, as Canadians are always looking for ways to, I think, express our national pride, and we don't do a very good job of it. We all never have. You're a big fan of music, obviously, with musicals, and we've seen great Canadian talent.
Right.
Whether it's Oscar Peterson or it's Anne Marie or Gordon Lightfoot or right down the list. And how many of them actually had to say, well, have to kind of go down to the States to really kind of cut our bones, because, people up here just kind of figure that's great, but, they can't be superstars because they're Canadian. Well, yeah, they can. And I think we're just now getting our heads around that, that, hey, we got some pretty good people here, some great talent. We don't just, just bring hockey players out of this country. We have talent. We have the arts here. People that are shocked, and as an actor, you see this all the time. Oh, that guy was Canadian. Yeah. William Shatner was Canadian. Right. Yeah, the two Ryans are both Canadians. I go to all their movies. Yeah, well, they're Canadians. Back in the 50s, Raymond Burr, Perry Mason, he was a Canadian. They didn't know. Yeah. Glenn Ford was a Canadian.
I remember a while ago where we had singers, and it's like there's so many of them, like AMs. We had Alana Miles and Alanis Morissette and Amanda Marshall. And it's like, well, what is it with like women whose initials are AM who are like breaking all over the charts all at the same time?
But we take great pride in seeing this, and I think maybe the greatest compliment is down there. All of a sudden, they just accepted. Well, that's a great talent. I don't care where they're from. And I think all of a sudden we figured, okay, we're always, I think it's human nature for us to always crave acceptance, whether it's in the arts or whatever else, athletics, politics, whatever the case might be. And I think there's always this, I don't want to call it necessarily an inferiority complex, but when you're, right next door to the elephant, as Pierre Trudeau once said, when the elephant sneezes, we get a cold. And if it rolls over in bed, we're crushed. So, we always have to be cognizant of that. But I think we're just now starting to once again learn that there's a lot to be proud about being Canadian, and we can stand with anybody. And I think our Prime Minister is showing that right now, on the world stage. I saw the story the other day that, when he was down there for the opening of the UN session a couple of months ago now, something like 85 politicians, world leaders, wanted an audience with Mark Carney.
Right.
How are you going to be in New York? I'm going to be in New York too. Can I have 15 minutes with him? That hasn't happened with any of our previous prime ministers. Right. There's a respect all of a sudden on the world stage with this leadership, and it's kind of gratifying to say, hey, yeah, that's our guy. And I think we always would need to see that. Americans are born patriotic. I mean, it's part of their DNA to flag waving and everything else, and we're not as demonstrative about it, but we're just as passionate, if not more so. And I think we're starting to see that, and I think the CFL is one of those vehicles for us to show that passion. Quick story. I know that we could be here all day. Years ago, with the radio station I was at CHML, we carried the Blue Jays. Long story short, we were taking listeners down to go see the Jays on the road. And one of them was Boston. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. I'm a big fan of the Red Sox and everything else.
I do, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love the Blue Jays, but I mean, the Red Sox since I was a little kid. So I'm down at Fenway Park, and the listeners are all down there, and they're just pregame. They have batting practice going on. And I want to get an autograph for my son. So I go in the souvenir stand, I get a baseball, and I'm going to run down there and see if I can get an autograph. And the usher's there and said, well, you can't, your tickets aren't for there. I said, I just want to get an autograph. I'll just go down the aisle. We came in from Canada, and, I won't bother anybody, but they're just coming out of the dugout now. I said, where are you from? You're from Toronto? I said, no, actually. No, I'm from Hamilton. He says, Tiger Cats. I said, well, how do you know Tiger Cats? I said, this is about a 19-year-old kid from Boston. And I said, how do you know the Hamilton Tiger Cats? He says, we watch the CFL here. It's on one of the cables, one of the ESPN cables. We watch it all the time. It's great. I said, and all of a sudden I get this huge swell of pride to say that's a Canadian product, and he likes it. And he, by the way, I got the autograph. But it's one of those little things that all of a sudden says, yeah, I'm Canadian, and that guy likes something that's Canadian. And recognized it. And I thought, this is really kind of cool, because we just, as I say, when you're doing this all the time, or when you're doing radio, as so many of us were, you're always wondering, is anybody watching? Anybody paying attention? Is anybody paying attention to the fact that we're Canadians? Well, yeah, they are. And I think we have to remind ourselves of that more and more on just about every facet, whether it's the arts, and you see that, I see that, whether it's athletics, even in politics now.
Yeah.
They're paying attention to us. I mean,
Yes.
Canada, we're standing on our own 2 feet, and people recognize that. And sometimes if we don't get that reaffirmation, sometimes we always have to wonder that we're always going to play second fiddle, and we don't have to not to the Americans, not to anybody else. And I think CFL football is part of that, which is why you've seen such pushback over the last couple of days and weeks now about these proposed changes.
Yes.
Whoa, that's not going to make it. And I've got mixed feelings about some of them. I don't give a shit where they put the goalposts. I don't mind having the goalposts at the end of the end zone.
Right.
Because it's a field goal is a field goal. Okay, you kick it from the 30 as opposed to the 50. That's no big deal. I always had a problem with 4 downs when I was playing high school football back in the 1800s. High schools back then decided, well, just so the kids can stay on the field longer, we're going to have 4 downs. And it lasted 1 season. And the parents and everybody pushed back and said, this is BS. We're not doing that. Right. Canadian football is 3 downs.
Right.
The size of the field, to me, matters.
Yes.
There are some things you just don't touch.
Yes, I was upset about that.
And I was upset about the process too.
Yeah.
Because invariably, there's usually a process. The winter meetings are coming up. That's where we're going to talk about proposed changes. They didn't do that. They just came out one day and said, well, the Board of Governors have all met, and these are the changes we're going to do starting next year.
Okay.
And I think what pissed me off about that was they said, wait a second, this is our game. I understand. Okay, you guys ultimately, you're the Board of Governors. You guys make the decisions, but you consult us because we're the ones that pay the ticket. And this is a ticket-driven league. Okay,
right.
This is not Major League Baseball. This is not NBA or the NFL, where they could play every game in front of an empty stadium and still make scads of money because it's all TV contracts.
Right. The broadcast.
I get TSNs here. This is how many people actually put their money down and buy season tickets or game tickets, whatever the case might be. And if you piss us off, you're doing it at your own peril. And I don't think they remembered that. And I think the pushback here is genuine because you're messing with something that people are taking pride in. This is different. This is our game.
Right.
And we should have some sort of an input into what's going on. Some of the changes, okay, like I say, we can live with. Nobody likes change. I guess we're always uncomfortable with it. But, the end zone, moving the goalpost is inconsequential. But when you start messing the character, the size of the field, and some of the other things that make Canadian football unique to Canada, you're going to get pushback. And I think it's deservedly so. And it's going to be interesting to see, in the passage of time. And I saw this when I was in politics too. This is going to be a very unpopular decision, and we're going to get a lot of shit for this. But you know what? Given time, they'll get used to it. Well, I'm not so sure people will.
Yeah,
we'll wait and see. This is going to allow for more scoring. This was one of the great seasons of the CFL. Right. More scoring, more points than anything else. Competitive football games right until the last second most of the time. What's the old cliche? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I think a lot of people are going to stand back and just have a wait and see attitude to see what their product's like now and whether or not it's going to be something that I'm going to want to be a part of.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when you said that, my first thought was we'll let it sit a while and they'll get used to it. And my thought was more like, my perspective is more like, let's see which of these things survive.
Yeah,
because I have a feeling they're going to have to pull back on a few of them.
Well,
I don't know why. So. I get that feeling.
Because we're smart people, we're discerning people. Canadians are we know what we like, and I'm always I think appreciative of the fact that when we don't like something, we're pretty vocal about it. Whether it's politics or whether it's sports, Montreal guy. I mean, you understand. I mean, there are 2 religions in Quebec. One is Roman Catholic, and the other is Montreal Canadians.
Yep.
And when they started losing and making some bad decisions, this is going back to the 80s, I guess. People stopped going. You'd go to it was the Montreal Forum before the Bell Center was along, and you'd see a lot of empty seats. And they said, you know what? People vote with their mouths and certainly with their money. And you're not playing the hockey the way the Montreal Canadiens are supposed to play. We're not going anymore. That's all there is to it. Same thing with the Expos. The Expos were a great baseball team.
Yeah, they were.
They should have won the World Series the year of the strike. They had the best
Yes.
team in baseball. They were robbed. There's that
Yes.
Netflix thing that I'm sure you've seen a dozen times. One of the great, they were, that's, you're saying that because they're Canadian. No, they were a damn good team.
No, they were really good.
And they got robbed, but people stopped going, and they stopped going because they were pissed off at management. It had nothing to do with the product on the field. They loved the product on the field,
Right.
but these assholes that are running the team, they get a great talent like Randy Johnson or something. Get rid of them. We don't want to pay these guys. So they got pissed off, and they simply voted with their wallets and said, we're not going to support the team anymore. Yeah. And sadly, it came to a terrific ending when they ended up moving the whole franchise. But Canadians are like that. If they don't like it, Toronto's different. Of course, you can, fill the Toronto arena. People just go, and some places are like that. Los Angeles was like that too.
Right.
The Bavasis that owned the Dodgers at one point just said, he says, we get 30,000 people here some nights. They just come to see how come the lights are on, and they'll stay for the baseball game. But Canadians are a little more discerning. We want we want value for our money.
Right.
And we want to be able to say, okay, I don't mind. I'll put down, $300 for a ticket to go see a concert if it's going to be a great concert. And I'll pay good bucks for season tickets to go see the CFL, but it better damn well be a good product.
Right.
And if it's not, you're not getting my money. That's all there is to it.
Right.
And it's a lot easier to see that and do that now than it was 25, 30 years ago, because I don't need you. You need me. I can stream. I can get my sports package on cable. I can stream this on that. And, I got lots of other entertainment possibilities here. Mm-hmm. So the CFL and every other sports league and every other entertainment venue better be on their toes, because the day that you figure I'm going to take these people for granted, you may regret it. And the old phrase, once you lose something, there's no guarantee you're going to get it back.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll change that. Well, you know what? We're going to change that back because it didn't go well. They're gone.
Yep.
And we learned that in radio years and years ago, that once people leave your radio station, once they don't like that song that you played, or they don't like what that guy said on the radio, and they go to tune to this other station instead, they're not going to come back a half hour later and say, well, maybe it's better now. They're there. Right. They're gone. They've moved. They've moved on until maybe that station pisses them off, and they may come back and they may not. Hang on to what you've got, whether you got audience or and loyal followers. You've got to listen to them. You got to understand what they're saying. And if there's something that you really want to move forward on, like changes to a football league or the way the game is played, okay, if that's your mindset, fine. But let's talk about this and let's get some feedback. It's as I've learned in politics, and certainly in doing talk radio too, people will accept change a lot more when you sit down and explain why you're doing it.
Right.
Okay. Your taxes are going up. And I know that pisses you off. Because municipal taxes are, the most regressive form of taxation, because it's not based on ability to pay. You own a house, you're going to get screwed. That's all there is to it.
Right.
And I know you're retired now, and I know your income has been slashed by about half, but we still have to increase your taxes. But here's why. And you may not like it, but if you explain this is what's going to happen and this is why, they'll at least say, yeah, they'll get it. Yeah. This is how much it costs to clear the snow every day. And this is how much it costs to run a plow down your street. And I want to continue to do that. But, you can't walk into a grocery store and say, okay, I know that bread's $2 and I can give you 50 cents for it. You don't barter.
Right.
If you want to pay less, that's fine. But this is going to be the level of service you're going to get, or you're going to get a cheaper product.
Right.
And it's the same thing with sports. If you want to change, you've got to explain why you're doing it. And maybe not everybody's going to buy in, but I think a lot more people will buy in once they have that explanation as to what you're doing and why. Yeah. And they didn't do that. They just kind of said, here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think that really kind of catches people off guard. Like there was no hue and cry to say, you got to make changes to the CFL. There's always been a hue and cry to say, we got to increase attendance. Come on. That's all there is to it. In places like, well, just about every other place, Toronto, of course, is the best example. How do you get fans back? Well, I don't have an easy answer for that, but not by pissing them off.
Right.
And that's what they've done in this situation. I hope it works out for the sake of the league. And we've talked to the Tiger Cat ownership here in the Hamilton area, which season ticket holders. And they explained, well, here's why we voted that way. And I said, okay, I don't agree with everything, but okay, now I get where you're coming from and why you did it. I said, I just wish you could have done this for everybody else,
right?
So that they could get an understanding of that too. So we'll see how it turns out. But I'm apprehensive about how it's going to be received once they start some of these changes. And let's face it, sometimes we all get upset and get all crazy about stuff, and it's unwarranted. Because I don't know how many times, especially when I was in politics, this is what we're going to do. Well, I don't like that. I think this is wrong, but it's going to work out. Trust me, it's going to work out. And
Right.
I can count on one hand, I think, over the years, the number of people that called me back and said, you know what, you were right. We're okay with that now. They just accept it.
Right.
But I said, and I don't regret or I don't judge them on that, because I said, you were right to feel outraged at the time because there was a big change coming.
Right.
But I've done my homework and we've done our homework, and we know that there's going to be some initial concern, but in the long term, this is going to pay off for you. It doesn't always. And
Right.
sometimes they call back and say, I was right. That was a stupid decision. I say, yeah, you're right. It was. But we always want to resist change. And I get that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, change is a lot easier to accept when that dialogue is forthcoming. And the CFL needs to do that. City all politicians need to do that.
Right.
There has to be more back and forth communication. And that doesn't mean a newsletter, of course, once or twice a month or once or twice a year even. It's the human contact. That's why you get what you get, the feedback that you get. We want the humanity. We want that to be able to relate to you, and that's why they watch the podcast. That's why they watch TV shows. They want to be able to bump into somebody on the street and to have a conversation. Say, yeah, how many times have you talked to somebody who's run into a celebrity like you, and they say, what a great guy. And that just reinforces the feeling that you already had. Hey, I like that guy on TV, and now I bumped into him the other day down at the mall, and what a really super guy. We talked for a few minutes, and all of a sudden, what it does is it validates the support that you're showing, and it validates your feelings. And
Right.
I am a pretty good judge of character because that guy is a good guy. Or conversely, what a dick. I don't want to run into that guy again. So
I remember the first time somebody recognized me from the show, and they said, "Hey, so you're the Eager Beaver, right?" And it's like, "Yeah." And so how? And I said something, and all I remember from the conversation is him saying, "You're the Eager Beaver," me going, "Ah." And I thought, "Oh my God, I must have looked like the most dumb person on the planet because I had nothing until I just like say something intelligent, say something that he clearly likes you, so say something that and it's like." Nothing came out. It was just like, blah. And I thought, oh my God, way to make a first impression.
Yeah, exactly. It's
I
one of
was
the
so
fun
caught
parts.
off guard. I never thought that would happen. I'm just in the parking lot of Canadian Tire. And it's like, hey, it's like, oh my God. And that person that at first is like, you're that Eager Beaver guy, right? And then at first it's like I'm bracing myself for 2 seconds. Okay, is this gonna be good or is this gonna be bad? We're near the end of our time for today, but I could keep talking to you forever too.
Yeah,
It's
this
just
is
so
fun.
engaging. I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, uh, right now, at the time that we are here in broadcasting, particularly with podcasting, what is the thing that audiences may not know about broadcasting that they really should appreciate to understand and sort of evaluate the people to whom they're giving their trust now? And conversely, on the other end, what is it that broadcasters need to know about their audiences in order to be effective?
I think the key thing here is it goes back to something we talked about earlier, and that's authenticity. They want to know that you're real. They don't want to see somebody who's contrived, who's plastic and wears that mask. And I think that's as a broadcaster, you need to be that person. You need to be authentic and be yourself. And as you say, there's presentation's part of this,
Mhm.
and whether you're addressing a business convention and you're doing a PowerPoint presentation, there's a way to present it in a fashion that's going to be engaging and entertaining, and that's what we try to do.
Right.
I'm not just going to sit here and talk in a monotone voice. If you do that, you may have the most intelligent thing, or the most instructive thing, or the most cogent points to make about almost anything. But if you do it in a boring fashion, people are going to tune you out. So
Right.
there's that element, and that's something we have to do. That doesn't mean you're being inauthentic. It just means that there has to be some work put in, some passion put into the presentation.
Right.
But what you're saying and what you're doing has to be real. And I think that's what people are striving for. And I think that's what they're looking for these days. And for people that are just getting into this business or radio, for the few jobs that are left in radio these days, it's be real, be entertaining, but be factual. Don't deal in fantasy. It's so easy to fall into those traps. But at the same time, we have to strive to keep informed. And like I say on the podcast all the time, the whole thing here is I don't want to change anybody's opinion. I just want you to think.
Right.
And you may change your opinion on something, you may not. I hear a lot of people saying, yeah, I never thought of it that way. You brought a different perspective to this that I never thought about before. Thank you. And I hear other people saying, you know what, you're an idiot. Shut up. You're not going to change my opinion. You're wrong and I'm right. Okay, fine. But at least, you watched.
Right.
And again, by the way, I'll give you one, that I used to tell broadcasting students, I taught for a couple of years too, is accept the criticism, okay? But a lot of it is criticism. And the reason they're doing it is because they're passionate.
Right.
A lot of people said, you know what, you're an ass. I'm not going to listen to you anymore. You're a jerk. And then 2 weeks later, I'd hear from them again. They'd call back. So they were pissed off at that, and that's good, and that's healthy. But they keep coming back because they appreciated what we were doing. Right. So, and it comes back to, like I say, being authentic and being real, and being honest with the viewers or the listeners or whatever it is, and that'll never hold you in bad stead. The old cliche that if you're not bullshitting people, you don't have to worry about what you just said because it's who you are.
Right.
Be that. And I know that sounds very trite to simply say be yourself, but I mean really you have to be because there's too many phonies, there's too many bots out there these days that people are becoming very, very cryptic, and understandably so. But at the same time, they love and they strive for authenticity. And if you can give them that and receive that back from your audience, then you're ahead of the game.
Good advice. Bill, thank you so much for your time.
This was a lot of fun.
I enjoyed this immensely. Please, you have an invitation to come back anytime. And if you, we talked about you, but I know that you like to talk about issues because you're passionate about politics. So if there's an issue that you have on your mind at any time and you would like to come on, please just send me a little thing. I would love to chat to you about issues because I listen to your show, and I don't want to say in violent agreement, but I will say very enthusiastic agreement. Sometimes I listen to you and it's like, oh my God, it's like he's reading my mind. And I have to say, given your career in broadcasting and how extensive it has been and how the longevity, I have to say that there is something validating about me having said something on my podcast, and then I go and listen to you and said, okay, I'm not far out in left field. There's another person who sees things relatively similar. So you make me feel better about my content.
That's good. That's good. I really appreciate that. Well, I enjoyed this thoroughly too. And to paraphrase Churchill, I mean, this is not the end. This is just the end of the beginning. Okay.
Absolutely.
We'll carry on this dialogue again, but thank you so much for this. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, and thank you to Madeline, who made this all seamless and completely painless and a complete joy. She's absolutely wonderful. And
she is.
Yeah. So
she is. So proud of her.
Yes.
When you wearing two hats as my daughter and as my producer and my guiding light, and of course, Eliza the doggie, who's sitting here. She's slept through the whole thing, so it had to be an enjoyable exercise for her too. So she'll be fine. But thanks so much for this. I look forward to our next conversation.
So do I, very, very much. Have
Take
a
care.
great day. Kits and Cubs. There you go. Mr. Bill Kelly. Just a wonderful time, wonderful conversation. A man that brings so much experience and passion and knowledge. And as you mentioned, we talked a lot about it during the show, but authenticity to what it is that he does. It's always a great compliment when someone in the same industry that you are in, that you respect a lot, has nice things to say about you, of course. That never sucks. So I'm feeling pretty good right now, I have to say. And I was feeling pretty good when I started the show. hopefully, Kits and Cubs, those of you who didn't know Mr. Kelly now have a sense of him, and you would definitely take some time to check out his show. It is available on YouTube, and I will take a little look here and see if I can, while I'm here, supply a link to you in the podcast chat for his show, but I will include them in the show notes afterwards. I will update them so that you can find him very easily. Kits and Cubs, I cannot recommend his content enough. And as you can see, a gentleman through and through. So we are always happy to present to you and to recommend to you other shows and other podcasters who do good work because, yes, we do want you to stay with us, absolutely. But we also believe in getting your information from multiple sources and to, if we can help a little bit in help you with curation of choices because there's a lot of choices out there and, of all various quality. So when we find people who do things and do things very well, we do want to share it with you because, it is one industry. And while some people can look at it as us being in competition with each other, we also I believe that we can get further if you find people that do quality work and that you highlight them and you share their content and you encourage people to go see them. And, you elevate the entire platform by elevating people who do their work seriously and do their work keeping the best interests of their audience in mind. So we don't look at it as competition. We look at it as trying to build, basically bake a bigger pie so that everyone gets a bigger slice. And, as we saw on the show often, right? We tell you, as Mr. Kelly also mentioned as well, it's like we don't try to convince you. We share a take, and we listen to your takes, and we bring it together, and it's a take. Not all takes are equal. Some are more researched. Some, follow the rules of logic when they're being brought to you, but you want different perspectives, you want different takes, you want different levels of experience, you want different perspective in what's being brought to you. And I think that in this day and age, if those of us who do this kind of work conscientiously can elevate each other and champion each other, it creates a overall better ecosystem of information for people to consult because we know you're busy, right? You have kids, you have pets at home, maybe you even have parents at home. Your long commutes, life is busy. And sometimes, you know, doing the work of curating all that information for yourself is just not on, right? You don't have the time for it. So you find a source, let's say like me, if you're, with me and you've been with me for a while and you know the quality of my work and how much passion, how much care I put towards it. And that trust that you place in us, right? We cherish that and we try to honor it and we try to respect it with everything that we do. And if we can find other people that are of that same like mind, um, that's when we tell you all the time, right? Don't just take our words for it. Go find out what other people are saying, compare, contrast. If you don't share our take, tell us why. Tell us what you think about the show, good, bad, and ugly. All of that stuff. It's for that very reason, right? We care about what we do, and we want to improve, and we realize that it's not just our show, but it's your show too, because you show up, regularly. Some of you show up every morning live in the chat, and there's community here. We want to travel this road together. So when we find allies and we find other people in this realm that are doing work that we respect, we definitely want to turn you on to them because it's not just about promoting ourselves, but the general overall ideal, that of authenticity and truth and integrity, and respect for facts, respect for logic, understanding of civics, and not working to pull the wool over your eyes or to try to skew the information to get you to see things our way, but just to bring you the information from multiple takes and multiple perspectives, and then injecting our own and letting when we make errors, but letting you know when we know things for sure, that this is a fact that we know, and when it is, it's speculation, when it is our opinion, so that you can take the best and leave the rest. And so when we have the opportunity to have guests like Bill Kelly or Charles Adler, and as we had in the past from Mr. Keith Bogue, who do this type of work and care about it a lot, and get some insight into why they do what they do and what makes them tick, and also get to show you that they're more than just broadcasters, right? They're like we are. We are full-fledged people that have a wide variety of interests and passions, and not just what we do, which is the reason why we do the pubcast monthly, right? Is to show you that there's another side of us, right? We're not just all politics, and the entirety of our identity is not politics. That there's more to life out there, and that being well-rounded and being engaged in your community in ways other than politics also matters. But again, that politics is not a spectator sport, and sometimes you need to just put your body in the game, because democracy is something that you do. So we are very happy to present this type of content. And as Mr. Kelly said, it's the end of the beginning, but it's not an end in itself. And hopefully there will be many opportunities for us to collaborate again, because any time spent in the company of Mr. Kelly, either live or, deferred, if you're watching what he is doing on your own time, is time that is very well spent indeed. All right, kids and cubs, that's the end of this episode of the Daily Beaver Morning Show and True North Eager Beaver interview project. We hope that you loved this, because we particularly loved making this one for you. Remember, sharing is caring, and word of mouth is priceless. So please, kids and cubs, tell your peeps and poops all about us. And if you can, share a little bit about yourself. Why it is that it resonated with you? Because that is advertising that we just cannot buy, and it is priceless. It means the world to us. So thank you for that. If you would like us to help you, kids and cubs, because sometimes you are on the go. Oh, wait a minute. I'm just seeing this here. Deborah Lockwood, because we haven't had a chance to show a lot of comments during the chat, during the show, and I'm going to be definitely looking forward to going to read what you guys said. But here, Deborah Lockwood. Bill Kelly is one of my favorite podcasts. He is nice to see old media broadcasters still doing the real work with facts like they used to. The media today on mainstream seems to be opinion, not based on facts on most stations. But I do like the CBC's, I'm going to guess David Cochran here. Yes, on power and politics. Yeah, I like him too. I have a lot of respect for the way he does his work too, that, he seems to remember past conversations rather than just forgetting them. And when he gets new information that's been verified, he then takes that and integrates it into his future interviews with other people. And that he's not afraid to bring back some historical perspective or bring some context into it, and not just let, the prescripted media lines stand. So, yeah. I hear you, Deborah, on that one. I have a lot of respect for Mr. David Cochran as well. But yes, I can't wait to read what it is that you have had to say about Mr. Big Kelly and our time together. As we mentioned, if you would like us to help you because you're on the go and sometimes you don't have the time to watch the show live with the Dam Fam or at your own convenience, well, hey, we do have a podcast version that is available for you. And you can get that thanks to the Ray Girl. By the way, thank you, Ray Girl, for coming to the show. And thank you for the lovely present that you brought. I did wait until I got home to open it, as you told me, and I absolutely love it. It's already in display on our living room. My beaver sweetie saw it. Was one of the first things he saw when he got home. Said, "Oh, what's that?" So it's in a place of high prominence here at the Beaver Lodge, and I am so grateful that you came and that you enjoyed the show. And to all my friends who have come, I've been very lucky. I've had friends and people that I've known at every single show so far. which always makes you feel good because after every show, I do come out into the lobby to thank people who came and to see anybody who came to see me specifically to give them a big hug. So it's always a joy. That's probably my favorite moment of the whole show is after the show when I'm in the lobby and I get to interact with people who took time and spent their money to come and spend some time with us and to be entertained, and that they actually were. So it's always a good feeling. Yeah, I'm feeling warm and fuzzy today. Get some cuts. So yes, thanks to the Ray Girl, you can see our pod page. That's podpage.com/ the true north eager beaver with a hyphen between each one of those words, or you just scan that QR code that has appeared and that will bring you right there. And when you click on subscribe, when we have something fresh off the podcast bandwidth, it comes directly to you. You don't have to do anything. It's just there waiting for you in your favorite podcast feed. Pop us in your ears and then go on and take on the day. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us, you can do that by surfing on down to the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube page, where our numbers went up again overnight. We are now at 27,300 subscribers. So thank you very much to all those who have joined us over the past few weeks. I'm not sure if we have an advertising blitz going on. I don't think so, because these numbers are growing at a little bit more of an organic rate. But hey, no matter how you find us, we're happy that you do. So thank you very much for that. And you know that kids Cassie and Elaine will definitely approve if you smash with our buttons, like, share, and subscribe. Give them a little click. It makes us happy when you do, and it helps with the algorithm. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us in other ways, we do incur some costs to bring this show to you. And if you would like to offer an enthusiastic expression of support or encouragement for our show because you would like us to produce more, you can do that by making a contribution or leaving a tip at the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund. Our tip jar can be found at our coffee page. That QR code that just appeared will bring you right there. But that's coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver. If you drop a couple of toonies or loonies in there, it makes us very happy when we hear that jingling sound. And it does help us with the show and bringing some content to you. So we are grateful for all of your contributions. They do mean the world to us. And if you happen to be doing the Buy Canadian thing, well, then you can send your contribution at truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. That's a direct bank-to-bank transfer. It all takes place in Canada. No USCE Tech Bros get a share of your money, and we get 100% of your donation. So your donation goes further. If you're watching on YouTube, we also have the super chat and the membership functions, and we thank you for all of your continued support. Like I said, it means the world to us, and we are just grateful because every tip, no matter how small, lets us know that you've been watching the show and that you've been paying attention and you support our mission and what it is that we are trying to do here, and that just fuels us to keep going. It's the reinforcement and the encouragement that we get when we see a tip come in. Again, we get a little high, we get a little buzz on that, and the amount doesn't matter. And it's nice to know, as Mr. Kelly said, sometimes you're wondering if people are out there and if they're listening, and it's nice to know that you're being heard and that you are having an impact. So we thank you so much for all of your generous contributions. Now, if you're not able to contribute financially, remember you can still contribute to the show. truenortheagerbeaver@gmail.com. Let us know what you think, good, bad, or ugly. If you have interview guest suggestions, Mr. Bill Kelly was a suggestion from a kit who actually did some initial outreach for us as well, which was very kind. So thank you, Kit Andy, for that. We really appreciate that. I might not have had the courage to initiate the conversation. I am. I'm sometimes a little too deferential, and sometimes I assume some people's reputations are just so big or so good that there would be no interest or no time, and that's my fault. I shouldn't do that because I'm basically ruling myself out, and if you don't ask, you don't get. But we got a little shove in the lower back to make this one happen definitely is welcome. So thank you, Kit Andy, for giving us a little nudge. Got that one because this was a wonderful experience, and I hope it was for you too. All right, kids and cubs, because democracy is something that you do remember, we have those two petitions for you that we've been talking about a lot. Petition E6679 for our commons, which is a petition that would encourage our elected officials to pass a law that would make it such that there could be consequences for politicians who deliberately spread disinformation. And we would like to put a stop to that. So if you would go there and affix your signature, that would mean the world to us. You have until the 27th to do that. So this one's closing soon. So if you haven't yet, please get on it. And we are at now 43,247 signatures. There seems to be a rush in the final days. So we'd like to see that one growing. And the other one that we have for you is our Commons petition E6281, which is a petition that would encourage our elected officials to draft some legislation and pass it that would make it such that Canadian media and our ownership laws would make it such that Canadian media should be owned by Canadians for Canadians to deliver news that is in the best interest of Canadians rather than some vulture capital or asset management firm based in the United States that has ties to the GOP, the Trump GOP at the moment. So that is a very important one. That one is signature period is still open for a while yet until February 18th, but it is growing as well. We are now at 6,332 signatures. And I believe the last time we checked in, we were at the 4,000. So about 50% more signatures today than there was the last time we checked in. So let's make this one grow as well. I'm sure that there's an appetite for this within the Canadian public, that we're just tired of being spoon fed what the American owners of the National Post want us to believe about ourselves and our country. And we would like to start hearing more people like Bill Kelly and maybe even us actually saying what we think is going on in our country and giving our perspectives, again, by Canadians, for Canadians, in the best interests of Canadians. So your participation there would be very helpful. As well, kids and cubs, if you happen to be living on Prince Edward Island, you have a by-election coming up on December 8th, provincial by-election for District 2, Georgetown Ponal. And of course, as we keep on mentioning, the leader of the PEI Liberal Party, Mr. Robert Mitchell, is running in this by-election. So he's trying to get the seat in the legislature as the leader of his party. The candidate nominations deadline has now closed. That was Friday, November 21st at 2 p.m. So hopefully we will be getting a final list of confirmed candidates soon. Advance polls will take place on November 29th, December 1st, and December 5th, with voting open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. on those days. And remember, kids and cubs, plan your vote, because friends do not allow friends to do democracy alone. Okay, words of wisdom, kids and cubs. Again, my words of wisdom are going to be: get rest when you can, especially if you've been pushing hard the last little while. You've had deadlines, things to meet, and you finally have a little bit of a breather. Take some time, celebrate your success and your achievements, but to take some time to breathe and relax and to treat yourself, because you are worth it. Absolutely, you are. You heard it from me, and we don't lie on our show. So there you go. If I say you're worth it, then you're worth it. You just have to believe it. All right, kids and cubs. It can be a tough world out there. So please be kind to and gentle with yourself. A big thank you to Madeline, and a big thank you to Bill Kelly for his time. We had scheduled 90 minutes. He gave us more time. Such a generous gentleman, and I am very much looking forward to future collaboration with him. That's definitely in store. And I'm just so, I have to say, it's just personally one-on-one, I am so flattered by the fact that he was aware of us and does enjoy our content and does respect what we do here. That means the world to me when you have people that have been doing this work for much longer than I have and have a much better reputation, much bigger audience than we do. And they say, we've heard of you and you know what, we see you. Keep it up. Um, Again, uh, that's the best kind of encouragement. And when we add it to the encouragement that you guys give us, then, well, our cup runneth over. Now, kids and cubs, if you haven't seen me drinking today from the cup, that's because I actually made the time to fill the cup with water, but I got so excited about the show that I actually left the cup in the kitchen, which is why I've had nothing to drink the whole show. So I am also going to offer a last little bit of advice. Hydrate, which is what I'm going to do after I sign off. But before we do that, audience participation, kits and cubs. At the count of three, may I please hear you say, Mr. Beaver, please cue the cock. On 1, 2, 3. Oh, yes. Thank you so much, kits and cubs. That was enthusiastic, particularly for a Monday. And since you said it with such enthusiasm and you asked so kindly, how can I resist? I must serve. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters, CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and the Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. All right, Skits and Cubs, just a little bit of news of Canadians who make us proud before we go. Congratulations to Piper Gillies and Paul Poirier, who closed the Grand Prix qualification season with a silver medal in ice dance at the Finlandia event. They finished second to France's Laurence Fournier-Baudry and Guillaume Cizeron. Interesting note about that team, Guillaume Cizeron is a longtime competitor who I believe has already won gold at the Olympics and now has a new partner. And Laurence Fournier-Baudry happens to be Canadian born. She just got her French citizenship, so she'll be able to compete in the Olympics for France, but she is Canadian born. Also, Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier finished just about 2 points behind the winners, so they were very much in it in the competition, and they have qualified for the Grand Prix final, which is very good. And there was also another thing that happened at this competition. Stephen Gogolev, who's having a comeback season. He's a single skater for men in Canada, and we haven't had a single skater win a medal on the Grand Prix circuit for a while, but he had a stellar competition and racked up 253.61 points to claim bronze in the men's competition. He delivered a clean short program, landing 2 quad jumps and a triple axel, entering the free skate in second place. Which was with 89.35 points, which was close to his personal best of 90.19 that he set earlier this season. So he's having a great consistent season here. And he, had somebody finish a little higher than him, obviously in the free, but still did very well because he only trailed the European champion and world bronze medalist Adam Xiao Himfa by 0.22 points in the free. Absolutely stellar performance for him, and it's nice to see a Canadian singles skater pick up a medal. And then that was not the only thing going on, because Roman Sadowski also competed, and he finished fourth overall. And he was sixth after the short program, but had an excellent free skate. Uh, so nice to see some Canadian singles skaters having some success. And for the women as well, Madeline Skizas, who is our favorite and the leading contender to secure the women's spot on the Olympic team, also finished to fourth place, which is a fantastic and a good result in her first Grand Prix outing season, as she had finished at ninth. So she absolutely surpassed herself and came up with a good result there. And in the pairs competition, the national silver medalists Leah Pereira and Trent Michaud finished fifth overall, and that was building on their recent personal best in the short program at the Skate Canada International. So great success for our figure skaters. Again, coming on to the Olympics, our ice dancers and our pairs skaters are the ones that we will be looking to for potential medals. But hey, a bronze medal for Stephen Gogolev as the Olympics are coming up is definitely good for Team Canada. And if not in the individual competition for him, will definitely be good in the team skate. And particularly if Madeline Skizas can deliver another performance like that, that could make us medal contenders in the team competition. So that would be a nice bonus, because last year at the end of the season, that would be something that we could not expect. So we'll keep our fingers, toes, eyes, arms, and legs crossed for our figure skaters who did very well, and that they will continue to do well. And our speed skaters did very well too. But we'll bring you that on another show, because we've already gone long enough today. All right, kids and cubs, that's all I got for you. Amour et bisous, and I am gone. See you tomorrow.